The Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security and I just met with this first flight of South African refugees to arrive in our country.
Boo.
White South Africans, that's really causing a lot of people to be appalled, frankly.
How dare you?
These are the descendants of the people who created the most diabolical system of white supremacy in human history.
Wow.
We don't know if they're criminal. We don't know this, what they went through in the legal process in South Africa.
The Afrikaners don't actually like the land. They can leave that country.
They are. They're leaving to come here.
Bingo.
They can actually leave and go to where their native land is, which is probably Germany.
Are you against them coming here?
Holland. Go back to where you came from, okay?
Are you serious? In this world, there's two kinds of people, my friend. Those with loaded guns and those who dig. Broadcasting from a Montana wilderness fortress at the headwaters of the Missouri, this is Matt Christiansen Live.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is Matt Christiansen Live for Wednesday, May 14th, 2025. A proud Duct Tape production. Thank you for tuning in. Sitting shotgun tonight is my friend, Mark Aaron. He's Canadian, but we allow it, of course. Welcome back. I'm glad to see the sun shines in Canada this time of year. Congratulations.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Sorry about your country, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's not really a country anyways. So.
No. So you're not too bummed out about it.
I'm accelerationist all the way.
That's
Let's
right.
go.
We discussed this.
Yeah.
We'll get more of your reaction to the Canadian federal election later on. Find Mark on X, by the way, at Liberty M. Aaron, linked in the description. In the news tonight, the U.S. accepts 50 white South African refugees, maybe 60. I forget what the number was. Suddenly,
too many. Way too many.
This country is full.
It's full.
But yeah, unironically, now many of the progressive, all are welcome here, send us your poor, your downtrodden, whatever the Statue of Liberty thing is. Suddenly, the Statue of Liberty is holding up that no vacancy sign instead, because we've finally found the refugees that ought to be questioned. What is the variable that explains?
It's a mystery. I can't figure out what it is that makes them not like these specific people. It's their character, I think.
Yeah, well, we don't know. There's lots of apparently white South African farmers are known for their high crime rate. We have no idea what they're about
bike
to do
thieves
to the country.
Bike thefts are off the charts.
David Hogg is now on his way to being ousted as vice chair of the DNC after he, of course, announced his plan to challenge incumbents. But this actually doesn't have to do directly with that. He's being ousted because of gender diversity rules in the DNC election process. Originally, I thought there was nothing they could do to remove him. He's had this fight with party leadership about potentially primarying comfortable Democrats in Congress. I was wrong. There is something they can do about him, and that is election denial. So that's enough refugees, and election denial is acceptable again. So times are changing. Things are really getting crazy. Later, we'll take calls and read emails. If you'd like to call the show, there's a link to the Discord server to do that. Linked in the description. There are instructions and help available on the server for you as well. We'll catch up with your super chats. Also, speaking of, hey, if you enjoy the show, please consider supporting the show. You can do that one time or recurring for as little as $1 a month over on my website, mattchristiansenmedia.com/support. Support for the show not only helps me sustain, but it helps me pay the people who make the show possible. There are perks available for your support as well. And don't forget, there are lots of new graphics available in the merch store too, t-shirts, mugs, and more. Likewise, merch sales not only help my operation, but they support the designers who made the graphics, all of whom are listeners of this stream, mattchristiansenmedia.com/shop. Find both of those links right there on the homepage, mattchristiansenmedia.com or mattis.gay, if you can't spell my confusing name. And we got to say hello to our featured listener-owned business for the evening. That's our friends at Hope Innovations. Have you ever wanted to grow your own garden, but you didn't feel like you had the space? With food prices rising and chemicals being added to our food every day, you might consider adding a hydroponic garden system to your home. Grow clean and fresh produce all year round with the Eden Tower from Hope Innovations. When it comes to growing your own food, invest in the best system out there and discover the joy of regularly having freshly harvested salads, homegrown herbs, tomatoes, peppers, and more with your very own hydroponic system. Engineered to be elegant and practical, the Eden Tower stands above the competition with its patented cup system that allows you to drop a seed and go. You do not need a green thumb to easily grow delicious and nutritious food. Business has been so good at Hope that they are now sold out on the kits until next month, June, but you can still get an order in for delivery in June. 50% down now, 50% due at shipping next month. You still get that awesome $200 listener discount. That's right. Listeners of this show get $200 off an Eden Tower hydroponics kit from Hope Innovations through a listener-exclusive link available only on my website. Head on over to mattchristiansenmedia.com/deals. Find the Hope Innovations section. Click the link, $200 off an Eden Tower hydroponics kit. You can get started growing your own food easily and simply today, or in June when they're ready to ship again. Proud Canadian product, by the way, Mark.
Oh wow,
these hydroponics kits from
they
Alberta,
look great, actually.
We
My
might
wife would love one of these.
They're legit. Yeah, I know they're doing really well. Hope Innovations, and it's a proud Alberta product. So soon we might absorb them as our own. Anyway, mattchristiansenmedia.com/deals, deals by listeners for listeners. And lastly, hey, they've got another new product over at Hero Soap Company. And they've repurposed my signature soaps, Timberline and Old West. Used to be just bar and liquid soap. Now those classic scents are available in a solid cologne, and solid cologne is great, much preferred to the liquid mess, if you ask me. Timberline, of course, is the classic frosty pine scent where the forest meets the peaks. Old West is oak barrels and leather, ready to bust open the saloon doors. Makes a great Father's Day gift as well. You can check out these signature colognes or bar soap, liquid soap, shampoo, conditioner, and more. 10% off all of it. Promo code MCListener at herosoapcompany.com. Promo code MCListener for 10% off at herosoapcompany.com. All right, hopping into the news, Mark. There's a development in the Karmelo saga. Wow. And I saw this later in the day. I know I sent you what I expected to talk about. This was not on the list because it's a new development, but you're familiar with the Karmelo Anthony, Austin Metcalf murder case, right?
Yeah.
So this is the track meet case. Black kid stabs a white kid in Frisco, Texas. Well, recall that one of the points of dispute of the Karmelo Anthony family representative, Dominique Alexander, I don't know if he's pictured in here, but he's the guy who did the press conference where they blamed the rain. They said if only it wasn't raining, or if only the school district had canceled the track meet due to the rain, then Karmelo Anthony would not have had to seek shelter in the tent, and the dispute would have never happened. He wouldn't have had to get stabby. That guy. One of the things he's been fighting for is Karmelo Anthony's graduation. He needs to get his diploma. So
then he'll become productive.
Once he is a formally educated person, he will stop stabbing people, yes.
Yeah.
Now, the school district had been trying to expel him because, he stabbed someone at a school function.
I shot someone with a gun.
Or I stabbed someone with a knife, as Batman put it. Normally, that is grounds for, if not legal intervention, as we're seeing happen, certainly school discipline. You're not going to school here anymore. And he hasn't been. He's actually been, of course, away from school while he's on house arrest. But his family and his representation through this activist, Dominique Alexander, they're saying, well, he pretty much did all the work. Sure, he didn't go to school for the last month and a half because he can't, but he pretty much did all the work. The school district and Centennial High School in Frisco have now caved to the activist demands, if you want to put it that way. He will graduate. And originally I thought that meant he was going to walk. like he's just going to show up in his cap and gown. Hey, guys. Everyone's wearing body armor. Like, okay,
yeah, exactly.
No hugs today. Sorry.
Perp walk, graduation.
Maybe he does have a perp walk graduation. You're right. You could do it that way. He's surrounded by armed guards.
Wow. Okay.
He won't be there. They won't let him walk, but they are going to give him his diploma. And Dominique Alexander says, well, I'm just very happy to report that Karmelo's academic achievements will not be disrupted.
Oh, right. Yeah, well, because...
Speaking of disrupting academic achievements, the Metcalf family, who they continually smear. I don't think... I think Austin Metcalf's academic achievements have been disrupted rather violently. His father, who just tries to hear their side of the story, gets smeared and booted out of the event. So this has been an absolute clown show to watch. But yeah, you know how if you ever go to like a Wikipedia page for a school and it says notable alumni.
Right. Yeah. Well, this is their claim to fame now.
Well, Karmelo Anthony
they say they're lowering the standards now. It's like, well, yes, murder will not stop you from graduating at this school.
Yeah.
We will make it happen.
We'll see if he makes the list.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I'm more interested in how it turned into the Shiloh case, that seemed to be the run on from this. I don't know if you know that one.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I probably talked about the Shiloh case. I think that was a couple weeks ago, but we did that Sunday stream and talked about it for like a solid hour.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Do you have Shiloh thoughts you want to discuss before we?
No, it's just great. I think it's fantastic.
Oh, you're just a fan. You're a big you're a big Shiloh fan.
I support everybody.
Well, maybe we can send some South Africans to live at Shiloh's house. The thing about South Africans, they have experience in defending against mobs of color. Let's put it that way. And since mobs of color are coming after Shiloh, she could probably use their help, I would think.
Is that why they're getting let in? It's for Shiloh.
Maybe you've connected the dots in the same way they connected Karmelo to Shiloh. That is why these South African immigrants are now arriving, or these refugees. On Monday, Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau announced the U.S. is welcoming about 50 or 60 white South Africans or Afrikaners as refugees. There was an event greeting them and making the announcement at Washington Dulles Airport. This follows Trump signing an executive order in February establishing refugee status for these Afrikaners, giving them an expedited path to come to the United States. Now, I don't know a lot about the history of South Africa and the racial conflict that exists there. So if you know more than I do, definitely jump in. But a brief, is that a yes?
Yeah, I know a bit. I think I know as much as the average person.
All right.
And there's, like everything else, there's a lot of bullshit around what actually happened. But as far as I know, they were kind of the first ones. Everyone's going to argue you. It doesn't matter what
I've heard
say about it. They're going to.
It's a little bit of an aside. I was discussing this with someone earlier this week, and I believe him to have some knowledge. I just haven't verified. He was telling me that when the Dutch or European settlers went down to South Africa, I mean, they started some 400 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But he was saying that this area, what is now South Africa, was actually uninhabited. We're always told that the land was stolen from the native Africans.
Yeah. No, so as far as I know, and I'm probably wrong, at least on some level, there were some blacks there, but not the ones who are now the most populous. They came much later, and basically, they tried to wipe out the blacks that were there, and somewhat to some degree succeeded. And they are just as much colonizers as the whites who came before them.
Tribal warfare.
Literally, yeah, it's just tribal. It's just racial. Animosity between every different group.
Yeah.
And the whites obviously built what there is.
That's only because they own all the farmland. Son of a bitch.
Right. Yeah. Someone turned it from nothing land into growing shit land.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was the unmelanated.
That's only because they stole the best land. All the other land. Just making sure the other side is represented here. I'm trying to be fair. All right.
No, it's good.
All right. So here's the New York Times summary of this. Take it with a grain of salt. This is just me reading their characterization. Again, okay. I'm not a historian on this matter, but Europeans colonized South Africa starting in the 1600s. The apartheid system of racial separation was instituted in 1948. That lasted until 1994. Now, this is the New York Times characterization. Because of apartheid, many white South Africans or Afrikaners they're now being denied jobs or targeted for violence because of their race. They say, okay, right. Some might say it's actual, but that's what they say.
As far as I know, that's the law. in South Africa now, because it was Mandela's party who got elected. I forget what they're called, but his crazy commies.
They put in law.
The
African National Congress or whatever it is.
Yeah, ANC. Yeah. And they, as far as I'm aware, they made it like you have to have so many blacks working in so many positions. Like all hiring, at least at the governmental level, is race based.
Yeah.
So they say.
And so, as far as these claims of they say they're facing threats, they say they're facing attacks. Well, the truth is, every year, hundreds of farms are violently attacked in South Africa. Dozens are murdered on farms every year in South Africa. And the sanitized presentation of that is, well, it's farmers of all races. It's just like they really hate farmers because of reasons. Like, put that pitchfork down, you son of a bitch. You won't be poking any more hay. Okay. The reality is that something like 3/4 of the farmland is owned by white people who are 7-8% of the population, something like that. And we're all supposed to believe that is through a whole bunch of injustice that has created this structure. Okay. I mean, the counterpoint is a lot has been built over time. And you tend to build wealth when you build productivity. When you make something out of the land, that's how wealth and land ownership comes to be, all that. But my point is, when the numbers of farm attacks and farm murders are reported here, just on Wikipedia, to say that that's not racial is to disregard the fact that when we're talking about farms, that is a predominantly white activity, profession, property ownership in South Africa. So, sure.
Well, I know Lauren Southern has a good, I forget what it's called, but she had a very good documentary where she went down and actually interviewed a lot of the farmers.
Farmlands, I think she called it, something like that.
Yeah, Farmlands, yeah, I believe so. And or Southlands, I don't know. But no, this is the way
what
the
was
left,
it called? I can't remember. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
The way the socialists frame everything, right, is that like, oh no, it's not racial that we're attacking them for their race, because it's only racist if it's power plus land, I guess, or like white, land plus a farmer, then it's racist. But you can't be racist against whites, so it doesn't count that we're attacking them for their race, because everything we do makes a lot of sense as long as you pretend it's not because we hate white people.
It was farmlands, by the way.
Farmlands.
Just sounded wrong.
Good call.
But anyway, also recall this is the country of Julius Malema, the guy who leads the Economic Freedom Fighters Party in South Africa, straight up commies. He's the kill the Boer guy. And you'll see him singing this song at political rallies. I played this just recently. It's just a song. Hey, we should shoot white farmers.
Figurative. Yeah.
You notice when he says kill the Boer refers to a person of European heritage. So he does not say kill the farmer of all races.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no, it's pretty specific. It's like, those guys.
But then he does the sound effects, and this is why I know this is a very serious topic, but whenever I hear Julius Malema do this, I know I'm also sitting very conveniently a long way away from Julius Malema. Whenever I hear this song, I can't help but laugh because of the sound effects.
Shoot to kill Yamaza. Kill the poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer. Brr, pa, pa.
Full autos allowed in South Africa, I guess. Now, of course, in fairness, his party it's a small minority party in South Africa. They've got 39 of the 400 seats in the National Assembly. But that is also mainstream politics in South Africa. They might not be the majority, but they are a party of significant influence. He's not necessarily fringe. He is a man with real political power. And of course, a promising rap career too. And that's I love the way that his song fits over a nice beat. Tell me, I played this a few weeks ago, but it was a different context with the guy in the Hogg state. Tell me what you think of like if Julius Malema got a good producer.
The poor, the farmer, shoot to kill, brr, pa, pa. Kill the poor, brr, pa.
It's pretty much the South African national anthem.
I like that it's very like chill down tempo.
I
it
got that.
suits the lyrical content perfectly. Yeah.
I wish I could say there's
Relaxed,
some metaphorical
genocide.
value to that. Like, I wanted to portray how casual he is. No, I Googled royalty-free beat, and that was the first one that popped up.
There you go.
But
That's
I
perfect.
like that one.
Yeah.
But that is not actually any more offensive than your typical rap song these days, though. He didn't say Heil Hitler, after all. So,
right.
You could play that one on the radio. Have you heard the radio version of Kanye's Heil
Is there? No. Is it, what
there is.
What does it
supposedly
consist of?
Do I still have the song?
It's just the beat.
Oh man, I got rid of it. I prepped the song in case it came up on Sunday. I wasn't necessarily planning it as a topic, but I figured it might have been referenced. It wasn't. But to be able to play the song on the show, I had to I didn't bleep it. I honked it. So every other, it was like honk Heil honk. That's how the song went. But
So it sounded like you were driving in India.
Yeah, kind of. I saw another streamer reacting to the radio version, and I'm not sure if it was real or not, but it sounded legit. And they just cut everything other than they don't understand all the things I say on Twitter. And then it was just dead air.
Just beat.
Because you can't say N-word or Heil or Hitler.
Right. Yeah. It's hilarious.
Anyway.
I mean, I remember the first time, because I don't listen to the radio or rap. And I remember accidentally somehow coming across a rap song on the radio. And I was like, why is there just gaps in the music every 2 seconds? And then it dawned on me,
this is why I was hoping that guy made that song as a joke, made that version. Because if someone out there is actually cutting up that song for radio purposes, why bother? You've pretty much eliminated the whole thing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
do it.
Yeah.
Do you have more on the farmers? Because I have
lots
crazy
because it's about the media reaction. But if you have general thoughts on the state of South Africa,
I don't want to preempt anything. So
I'm going to move into how crazy the media reaction has been. So if you just want to talk about South Africa
on everything, it's remarkable.
This is where, obviously what's going on in South Africa is interesting and important for its own sake, but this is one of those events that just changes all the prevailing wisdom, the default perspective. Suddenly everybody has totally shifted their position on this. And as far as this particular group of South Africans, the 50 or 60 who just arrived, I'm not sure what their specific claims are. The Deputy Secretary of State described them as being threatened during the event yesterday. I don't know if any of them say have had family members killed or have endured anything like that. I don't know those, their situation.
Is there a special qualifier, or are they just a random selection of people?
I think they just, as far as I'm aware, we know that they say they've been threatened, but what are the details of that? I've not seen information. But all of this has just been amazing to watch because, after it's not just the reversal of opinions, it's the context in which it fits, because we have been through years or decades even of hordes of millions of not white people coming to this country under the same premise. I'm a refugee, I'm seeking asylum. We've had that swarm at the border for years. Suddenly now it's these 50 or 60 white people from South Africa, and that's a big thing to question. So the CNN and the MSNBC analysts are just reversing their reasoning about immigration generally, or they're denying the reality of the persecution. Those are the two routes I'm seeing them go. And in one case I'll play here, one guy who I knew I recognized him when I saw him, and I realized who that was. And I recognize that guy. He was almost implying that these white South Africans deserve being targeted. So
sins of the father, right? That's how we.
That's
here. If anyone ever did bad,
that's the argument. He's
even
going
there,
with.
Maybe did bad. What did they do? They were, your great grandfather was a racist.
So the first argument is courtesy of CNN host Sarah Sidner. Hey, this persecution is, in fairness, she's presenting someone else's opinion, but you decide if you think she agrees with it or not. This persecution isn't even real. After all, we asked the president of South Africa. We asked the persecutor.
The South African president says the people arriving in the U.S. today do not fit the definition of refugees, and that what Trump has been told about their persecution is false.
Okay. Could you imagine? Now, I know that Canada is a little bit different than the United States, but we have something of a similar fate in this way. Could you imagine if we just let a bunch of people into this country under bunk claims of persecution, false claims of asylum.
Yeah, no, it would fall apart instantly. You can't do that, Matt.
Would we even be countries?
Established law. Yeah, no, you got to really qualify. And being targeted specifically by name and race by your government is not anywhere near what we need to. We did the same thing here. The media said, oh Trump's letting in white Afrikaners, but what are they escaping?
Yeah, well, and this reporting is actually in Canadian media, Global News. The president of South Africa is saying, "Oh, you cowards, you pussies, get back here."
Yeah. Well, I saw the clip because someone was interviewing. I don't know if it was the guy you played before, and they said because he said, "Well, we're not saying kill the white men, yet."
The president of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, says these Afrikaners who chose to move to the U.S. as part of a resettlement program by the Trump administration are cowards, and he has no doubt they're going to return to their home country soon. I'm sure they can't wait to get back so they can have their land seized on non-racial grounds, or maybe they get a non-racially motivated attack on their farm.
Yeah, but the difference between these guys and the majority of other refugees is I'm sure they'd love to go home if they weren't being actively persecuted.
Yeah, if you could remove the structure of the structure that's all but hunting them. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
That is the word. I just hate using it because
I know that's the problem. All the words. Well, I had replied to the article on X from one of our glorious media outlets with the answer genocide. That they're escaping genocide because I've looked into it before for other reasons, just to know where I can shitpost and where I can't. And the definition literally is the intentional murder or removal of an ethnic group in whole or in part.
Okay.
So if you intentionally kill two people of any group because they're part of that group, that is literally genocide. And if some people get to use the term, everybody gets to use the term.
It's definitely been a bastardized term lately, and I appreciate that you're appealing to a legitimate definition, so I'll take it. I always try to interpret people in the best way possible, but you look at this quote from the president and you think, he should be glad that they left, right? Like, good. We don't want
here so we can kill you.
But he's mad. Please come back because we don't just want you gone. We want the joy of killing you ourselves.
We want to do it ourselves. Exactly.
Yeah. Burr pa, as
What did you
Julius
leave us? This land? What are we supposed to do with that? Grow things on it? Come on. Be realistic.
But okay, let me try to make it as gentle as possible because I think it's fair to say that objectively, there is no formal government policy of kill the boar. It's not the government going out and murdering them. There are rogue racial terrorists doing stuff like that. And then there's the government. But the government has policies that are adjacent. These are real policies that, if not violent in design, are kind of violent in their ends. From BBC reporting, there's a new law in South Africa that allows for expropriation, as in they take your property without compensation only in circumstances where it is, quote, just and equitable and in the public interest to do so. Now, note the law there, at least as characterized this way, doesn't make a racial judgment, but
yes, it did. It just said equitable, and we all know what that means. Yeah.
Second paragraph in the BBC describing the law: black people only own a small fraction of farmland nationwide. More than 30 years after the end of the racist system of apartheid, the majority remains the white, and the majority remains with the white minority. Okay, so we're talking about just straight up stealing people's property, even though it's going to be white people's property, for
equity,
public interest, which is going to be perceived racial justice. That's government policy right now. And again, that might not be violent by design. It doesn't say like, we're coming to kill you, but it's going to be violent in its enforcement to the extent people resist that.
It's not like what they're suffering there is just from the top down. The gangs that are going around, the stories I've heard are like nightmare inducing, just horrific stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not that it's necessarily state sanctioned and legalized, but they turn a blind eye and they're not trying to stop it. And it's the culture, right? So when the government is ambivalent to your suffering and there are murder, just psychotic baby boiling murder rape gangs coming to your house out of perceived or real racial grievance, and the government is couldn't really care. I mean,
I heard the deputy secretary of state say something very close to that the government, their claims of persecution here are, it's not that government agents are coming and pointing guns at their faces. It's that they're being threatened and they report the threats to the authorities, and the authorities are like, cool, don't care. And nothing ever gets done.
Pussy.
You coward.
Yeah.
Now, the propaganda runs deep. I found out today we're actually getting some of these refugees here in Montana. They one family at least has been settled in Missoula, which is just a couple hundred miles down the interstate from me. And even in the local Montana reporting, NBC Montana, family of South Africans dubbed refugees by the federal government. A South African family labeled as refugees by the Department of State. Okay, so now we're just, everybody else was a refugee the second they put up their hand and said, I'm seeking asylum.
Yeah, this is like the believe all women until they tell on who's the woman who accused Biden of
Tara Reid.
Believe all women until they turn on a Democrat. Yeah. So everyone do not question any claims whatsoever of refugee status until they're white. And then literally deny genocide.
It just goes to, I don't want to think that these people just hate white people, but they give me no other option.
I'm sorry to break it to you.
It goes to, if they don't hate white people, it goes to show that fundamentally they believe that white and victim are incompatible categories. It is not possible to victimize a white person. The Venn diagram has no overlap. They are completely distinct. There is no common area between them.
Well, to really give it the devil's advocate treatment, you could say, well, there was a very substantially racist system put in, if not by these people, by their predecessors. And so it's the sins of the father, generational guilt. So it's not because they're white, it's because they're the progeny of bad people.
Well, yes, exactly.
That's the most charitable way you could possibly take it, which is still by any moral and ethical standards insane.
Yeah. And there was an argument exactly to that effect on MSNBC. Sure, maybe these people had no personal part in apartheid. At least most of them didn't, unless they're pretty old at this point. But they are descendants of people who did. So what's the big deal if we just have a little retroactive justice against them? Why not punish the son for what the father did, as you described? This is Richard Stengel, former Obama official, on MSNBC.
These are the descendants of the people who created the most diabolical system of white supremacy in human history, apartheid. They're not directly responsible for it, but it was a system that actually moved black people off of the arable land. So they inherited the land that the black people had to give up. It was called forced removal. It was something called a Bantustan policy, where they moved black people out of the cities and farmlands into these remote areas with non-arable land. I mean, it was just one of the most worst processes ever. But what has happened in this strange, bizarre world we're living in is that the Afrikaners have become the darling of these right-wing, white supremacist movements around the world. That it's like the lost cause for them. It's like the old Confederacy. They're held up as these white Christians who are being dispossessed of their land. It's like this is a modern replacement theory in a country where, by the way, white people make up 7% of the population and own 78% of the farmland. So it's actually, there's no injustice here.
Wow, what a closer. So it's totally cool. How bad is white supremacy? If the most, what did he call it at the beginning of the clip?
Sorry, I think you mean most white supremacy.
Yeah, supremacy.
Yeah.
But he said it's the most diabolical instance of white supremacy in history.
Yeah,
they moved some people.
Hitler's not that bad anymore.
No, I guess not.
Hitler, the Boers are worse than
Destiny,
Hitler.
The Trail of Tears.
Yeah,
no, it's they moved them and then grew some food. in the place.
Well, it is the narrative that I was talking about at the start of the show. Like, oh, all of this this productive land was stolen from them. I'm supposed to believe that if it wasn't for all this 7% evil white population, that all the entire black population of South Africa would be this agricultural powerhouse. If only
they'd be farming like crazy. It's very in their culture to farm.
And I don't know what else he means if not this, but when he says there's no injustice in attacking people and taking their stuff if they own more than you do, because that's his premise. 72% of the population owns 7% of the stuff. So there's no injustice in taking some of it back. Okay, Kami, I guess stack up, because I don't know how else you settle that. There's no, if someone, you're never going to have equal property ownership to the extent that different people are productive at different levels. Not never.
And this is like, and it's usually, I mean, you're going to get a lot of this from certain groups, and those certain groups can be attacked with this exact same metric. Oh, well, hey, nothing like being disproportionately represented in like wealth and influence. Like, he's not in every single time.
I think you could do that sort of check on this particular guy if you wanted to. This guy, I knew when I saw the name Richard Stengel, I'm like, where do I remember that? Because I just did a video a couple weeks ago about some of the censorship apparatus that existed under the Biden administration, and that was largely done under what was called the Global Engagement Center. Marco Rubio had released a bunch of information about what was going on in the State Department. And the guy who built that entire infrastructure was this dude, Richard Stengel, former Obama official guy. He counters Russian disinformation and ISIS propaganda, and he built a lot of that censorship apparatus. And then here he is saying, there's not really any injustice in taking your stuff if you're more productive than someone else and you have more than they do. Anyway, just straight up commie nonsense. The complete mask off and just the lack of it. Because the more I pay attention to politics, the more I find, especially right now, there's like two groups: the rational people who kind of think a little bit, and just mindless R words. Wait, what? What are the R words?
The retards.
Oh, you can say that.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying.
You can say pretty much all of them.
Vocabulary.
Yeah.
But like, just there's like without even a concept of second order effects of like, okay, what you're saying here could be applied differently, but they don't care. They're like, okay, I'm completely contradicting myself, but what I want is gay race communism, and I don't have any principles or like, it doesn't matter. I don't have to be consistent whatsoever. And yeah, it's thank God they're losing at everything right now, currently in your country. And debatably so. Even it depends who you ask. Obviously, I think things are better now than they would be had the election outcome been different. But the counter efforts, I don't know, are as strong as they could be either. Anyway, another good take from MSNBC's Yamiche Alcindor. She got heated over the Trump administration's claim or implied claim that these South African refugees are going to be very easily assimilated and are a low security risk, perhaps relative to other refugees.
Trump administration, they're saying that essentially these white South Africans assimilate better, and they're also not as much of a security risk. That's really causing a lot of people to be appalled, frankly. And I also should tell people that this violence that they're talking about that are dealing with these Afrikaners, I've been hearing from people that say there is violence in South Africa, but it's affecting everybody of every single race.
Right. All those black on black farm violence in South Africa is terrible.
Yeah, they don't speak English, right? They speak Afrikaans, I believe.
Yeah, it's like a Dutch variant or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it's like how Australians convince themselves they're speaking English. I think.
Okay,
it's like that with Dutch. But as far as because I've come into various South African people, and they all seem to speak English from my experience, but they also speak Afrikaans, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, so Dutch is its own language. I thought for a second I was sounding stupid. And
yeah, no, Dutch is a language for sure. But Afrikaans, is it a variant of Dutch? Or
I believe so. I don't know. But
I'm sure there are rates of bilingualism with English, because I think English is very prevalent just in South Africa in general.
Yeah.
Not a French country, is it?
I don't.
I got to shut up. I have no idea.
Insightful analysis here. We learn on the fly, that's how it goes.
Ideas.
Here's one thing you don't have to learn on the fly to think about. If you think that these South African farmers, let's put it, take a South African Boer farmer person and say I don't know, Somali guy straight out of Mogadishu. Okay, I'm not even taking shots at Somali guy. It's just if you had to guess which one's going to assimilate easier and which one is probably the lower security risk, you're delusional if you think you have no information on that. You can't possibly make a guess. And if you consider that to be offensive or something, you don't even have to do that based on race. You can look at what's going on in South Africa based on productivity. One guy is coming here with some knowledge about how to build something. All you have to do is leave him alone, and he's probably going to build something more. Another guy, I don't know, he might be, who knows? He might be the Mogadishu medical genius, or he might be a pirate fresh off the dinghy with a rusty AK.
What you don't understand, Matt, is there are many Americas. And that Somali is going to fit in great in Ilhan Omar's Minnesota.
He will fit in there.
So who are you to judge?
I guess that is a fair point.
Worse?
Assimilate where? I did not clarify.
Into what? Southside? It's a place.
Yeah.
Assimilate fine.
I loved Al Sharpton trying to make some semblance of a point. I don't even understand him fully, but one of his points was, I'm not clear if he's being serious or trying to be tongue in cheek.
You can't tell.
It's very hard. But Al Sharpton is making the point that these refugees were not properly vetted.
President Trump is saying to white Afrikaners from South Africa, I'll give you refugee status. So we're bringing in white Afrikaners who we don't know if they're criminal. We don't know this, what they went through in the legal process in South Africa. But people right here in Newark, we're going to assume they're all criminal. We're going to bring them out. And if the mayor wants to say, wait a minute, let's have due process, lock him up. He's trespassing. It is as blatantly a double standard as one can get. So what's the difference, Mr. President, between a refugee and a guy that may be a criminal and may not be, given the Garcia situation?
Likelihood?
Well,
odds.
Given the Garcia situation, again, it's not just looking at him and saying that guy is from El Salvador, so I think criminal. Although maybe you. To your point on odds,
I feel like bringing up a per capita thing.
Oh, that's a racist construct.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But you can look at Abrego Garcia and think criminal because there's body cam footage of him trafficking illegal immigrants across the country. I can look.
You know what? I would do this, and I would support Trump doing it. Any of them that have face tats can't get in.
I mean, I don't hate it. It's if productivity
Let's apply it to same or MS-13 gang tats.
Yeah. Sorry,
you can't come.
Productivity is the name of the game, and it is harder to be productive when you have face tats. Employers are going to discriminate in a hiring practice based on that, right? No doubt.
Yeah.
So okay. Anyway. The point is, we're not even just looking at Kilmar's face and thinking criminal. There's video of him trafficking people. Yeah. His wife accused him of beating her many times, and he hangs out with known members of a criminal gang.
You're racist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is the last one. Actually, no, I have to go back to Al for a second because I don't even understand the logic.
I didn't understand half of the sentence.
The double.
What's trespassing now? Is that the term for?
Well, so what he's talking about is there were these members of Congress and the mayor of Newark went to a new ICE facility in New Jersey.
Oh, is this where they punched a guy?
Yeah. They got violent and rowdy, and the mayor got arrested for trespassing, but he's already out.
Oh, okay.
And now he's saying this is some kind of double standard because these South Africans aren't vetted, but the mayor got arrested, or they're putting people in ICE detention for arbitrary reasons. I don't understand the double standard he's trying to illustrate. So I actually can't even follow his logic. Trying to.
It's Ozempic brain.
He has zemped out really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. something bad is going to happen to him in the future.
I got like, literally, I'm trying to come up with a comment. It's like, no, it's just completely disheveled, just word garbage. Sorry. Yeah, I can't.
Last one, and it's now a CNN talking point. Everyone must go back to where they came from. Right. CNN analyst Ashley Allison sparring with Scott Jennings. These white South Africans have no business in America. They should go back to where they came from, like Germany or Holland.
The people who are native to that land deserve their rightful land back. That is not what the Afrikaners actually want to have happen, which are the white Africans, and so who are not originally from Africa, who colonized South Africa also. And so that is what they are saying is discrimination. Now, if the Constitution in South Africa is discriminatory, they have their checks and balances in that land, just like we do. And that is for them to, so if the Afrikaners don't actually like the land, they can leave that country.
They are. They're leaving to come here.
No, they can leave and
are coming here.
They can actually leave and go to where their native land is, which is probably Germany.
Are you against them coming here?
Holland, probably.
Holland.
You know what all I'm hearing is that like Miss Georgia, which is like, and the Iraq and such.
Yeah, that's a throwback.
Yeah. Go back to where they came from, like Kazakhstan, right?
Does everyone in this conversation have to leave now? Ashley Allison, you have to go back to Africa. Scott Jennings, you have to go back to Europe. By what
well,
logic?
And again, does she not? She doesn't know that Africa is a continent, apparently. And also, this is what I was saying before: is that it's like the Zulus or whatever, the most prevalent African people there now, currently in South Africa, aren't indigenous to there either. So should they all go back to where they came from, which is another country on the continent of Africa?
I guess by what logic does she think this country exists? And I'm sure she probably would say, yeah, none of us have any legitimate claim. Well, be the example and get the hell out of here.
Right.
Live the life you demand of others.
I've heard it's really racist to say, go back.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Unless, of course, unless they're white. And then wait till people find out that like Native Americans aren't from here either.
Check out the old land bridge. See what happened there. But when she says they have legal protection in South Africa, they have checks and balances. They have due process. No, they don't. That's the problem. These people are calling the police and saying, a bunch of black guys are trying to kill me and I'd like to keep my farm. Really? Don't give a shit, pussy, as you said.
Yeah.
That the law is not protecting them. That's the problem. The law, and it's not just the law not being enforced, it's the law as it exists. Remember, the law as it exists is, if the state deems it in the public interest, we're going to take your shit and say it's cool.
Yeah.
That's that's a problem in the law. That's not the law protecting you. All right. Last item I have on this topic, and then I got a couple other things before we hop into some calls. But on this topic of like what counts as being native to a place, Matt Walsh had some interesting thoughts and ended up tweeting an interesting AI generated image. Did you see this?
Yeah, I saw the image.
Okay. So
did you squint?
In fairness, I didn't see it at first either. But let me start with
it took like the 8th comment. I was like, oh.
I did think they look like oddly placed. Like something about this girl on the right, her posture is all messed up, Yeah. Anyway, we'll get to the image in a moment. Let's take the idea here. So whether Matt Walsh knew or not is what I want to figure out. But okay, the idea here is if these white people in South Africa don't have a claim to the land, even though they've been there for hundreds of years, at what point does one become native or have a legitimate claim to the place? These Afrikaners built prosperity in South Africa for centuries. White people built prosperity in the US and Canada for centuries. Neither country is what it is without them. And does none of that deserve credit or create a legitimate claim to that place? If the standard is, as Matt is saying here, that race wasn't here at the origin of life itself.
Right.
Well, then nobody really has a claim to any place because life originated in one place and then everybody moved,
Well, if you want to go really far, then, Africa's ours.
I guess, yeah.
So get out.
Go back to where you came from, wherever that may be.
Listen, at the end of the day, it's always just a fight for access to white people, in my opinion.
Well, also hating them.
Whatever bullshit can use. Yeah, well, hate access to them so you can hate them for wanting to be around them and be envious and just the worst of human behaviors. Yeah, no, that's it. It's ridiculous and retarded.
So,
but
Matt,
where did he go? Because Canada. Sorry, I was in a huge Twitter fight about this a long time because I had called Canadians of European descent who speak either English or French and have been here for as many hundreds of years and generations as I have. I had called us a ethnic group, and oh yeah, I kicked the gay hornet's nest with that one. And apparently, because I had also said it was like white Australians too. I believe I said because there is no specific definition, right? And it's always this is where the postmodernists weren't specifically wrong when they're like everything is kind of gray, and if you try and dig down into it, really into race, there are no hard lines, and so it's just kind of always generalizations.
Only hard R's.
Yeah, there you go. But you got to generalize at some point, and at least generalization should be fair across the board. And in instances like this, we just see that it's massive hypocrisy, and there's no intent to apply things fairly whatsoever. So, yeah.
So the point that Matt is making here, I'll read his tweet. People who look like that, again, the white people in the photo, they've been living in the Americas for 5 centuries. If 5 centuries is not long enough to qualify as native, how long do you need? If the answer is that your ancestors have to actually originate from that place, then nobody is native to anywhere. So where do you draw the line? And okay, then now that I see it, I don't even have to squint. It's one of those once you see it, you see it. But if you don't see the symbol that is present in this image, go ahead and just squint your eyes and look at the screen, and you will see a very precise swastika that exists in the arrangement of these young women. So what is Matt Walsh doing?
Here, we just start playing the intro to Runaway.
The original poster. So Matt Walsh is quote tweeting someone, and this person he's quote tweeting actually has kind of a progressive, maybe left-wing perspective. These people are native to Europe, not the Americas or Africa. Sounds like you need to Google what the word native means. Does the like progressive dude who posted this know that it's a swastika?
I don't think so. Okay. I think he Google searched it, and that was the first thing he looked for. I don't know if he AI searched it or Google searched it. It was like group of white women in white looking really white, and that's what came up. It's like, and he didn't squint.
I'm not sure that either guy sees it. But the question here: did Matt see the swastika? Did he not see the swastika and post it accidentally? Or did he see the swastika? Does he know exactly what he's doing? And is he potentially picking a fight with his bosses?
You're an asshat.
Is he trying to enrage his Daily Wire overlords to see his way out?
You're an asshat.
Because
maybe he's trying to get an early exit, because I hear things aren't going so great.
There's been a lot of separation at the Daily Wire, and I don't have any inside information, of course, but you've had a lot of people leave. You've had a lot of people forced out. Matt Walsh seems like the next logical neck on that chopping block, not because he's a poor performer or something. I think for the most part, he's great. I used to be I find myself more in disagreement with him in the past because he kind of struck me as, he'd always talk about like banning video games and stuff like that. I thought that was lame.
He's very boomer-esque. Like there's a lot of, it's like, really, like the guy's a buzzkill in a lot of ways. I find he's like,
but he was correct about he nailed, I shouldn't phrase it that way. He was correct about Shiloh, and so I
didn't hear his take.
Yeah,
he was. I don't even. What is the correct take? Because again, I'm dubious about a lot of circumstances around that. Like I don't think that there was any. For all my gut instinct tells me, it was like a normal 13-year-old kid being a jackass.
Yes, yeah.
And when I say deserved it.
When I say correct, I don't necessarily mean like diagnosing the fact pattern. Though I agree with your suspicion there. Okay. I think that's correct. What I mean is interpreting it.
Because I have never seen a picture or an interview, and I would have, right?
That's true too, yeah. What I mean is the interpretation of it. And there was a lot of, in my opinion, right-wing pearl-clutching qualification of like, oh, what kind of mom calls a child the N-word, even though we never saw that happen and we don't have the context and all of that. His point generally was, this is not about whether Shiloh was mean to that kid or not. It's about the idea that a person uttering a word is going to be some sort of life destruction. And we're saying, no, you're not going to destroy someone's life over saying a word, that word, any word, that's over. He made some statement to the effect of, this is the end of cancel culture. And some people are ripping him for that. Like, oh, well, clearly people are still being treated in hostile terms because of things that... It might not end it right now cleanly, but the point that he's making is people might think twice before trying to ruin someone's life over petty nonsense. And the Somali guy in the Shiloh case, he said that in TV interviews after the fact. Oh, I thought she was going to be punished, but I guess she's going to be rewarded. Yeah, it tells me what you're not trying to like resolve a conflict. You're trying to flame her to try to get her punished, and it didn't work. And that's really what Matt was talking about. So when I say correct, that's what I mean. It wasn't full of this like qualification, apologism nonsense. It was just like, yeah, I mean, I don't know if she's a good mom or not, but like she said a word, okay? That's it. And we're not going to allow the saying of a word to be some destructive force in someone's life in this way.
Well, especially when we all know it's bullshit. Like that's the number one thing that, sorry, I'm getting, I'll stop being offended. I'll start trusting black people who are offended by the N-word when they stop calling each other that. Like when they, if you actually cared and it wasn't just a power play, you'd stop using the word, but you love that word.
Yeah.
So
it's instant victimhood.
Shut up about it. I don't care. And it's not just victimhood. It is a bludgeon to beat you with. And if it wasn't that word, to be any other word. The word is irrelevant. It's I get to tell you what to do. It's a power play and a superiority complex. And I can't stand it. I generally I avoid using the word because of the social stigma. But it might not be the end of cancel culture, but it's a good signal that white people are getting fed up with being bullied.
Yeah, that's it. So we'll see how long Matt Walsh and the covert swastika last over at the Daily Wire. The clock is ticking, perhaps.
You're an asshat.
Want to talk a little bit of David Hogg, and I want to leave a little bit of time for the Canadian election, too, before we hop into calls. I'll be quick on this, but the David Hogg v. DNC saga is one of my favorite stories of the year. So last I checked in on the David Hogg v. DNC story, David Hogg said he was going to use $20 million from his Leaders We Deserve group to challenge safe Democrats in Congress. He thinks they're not doing enough. We got to get them out of there. We got to get fresh, young faces like David Hogg. And of course, recall David Hogg was elected as one of the DNC vice chairs at the party's meeting in February. And DNC chair Ken Martin, who is maybe the only Democrat more forgettable than Tim Kaine, who of course you can't even remember. Ken Martin, all he was doing was just standing there and saying, "Boo, David Hogg. Boo. Stop it. Stop doing that. I don't like you." But he really couldn't do anything about it. You had James Carville, the old school Democrat, doing media appearances saying, David Hogg's a jackass. We need to be taking on the Republicans. Why are we doing stupid infighting? This is strategically stupid. And I, based on how this was unfolding, I thought the DNC was really stuck. Like, they really had no way to remove or punish him other than maybe he's voted out next time they have party leadership elections. Apparently not. And actually, this is not directly in response to David Hogg's effort to remove comfortable Democrats in Congress, but it's going to kind of go that way. So the route that Democrats have to remove him quickly is they're now embracing the dark art of election denial. That's right. They're back. They took a break from 2020 to 2024 after exercising it regularly after 2016. They took a break and suddenly became unquestionable during the Biden era, and now they're back with election denial. This election of David Hogg, it didn't work right. They have to do another one. So the DNC's Credential Committee has now voted 13-2 plus 3 abstentions to void the February election of David Hogg and Pennsylvania State Rep Malcolm Kenyatta as vice chairs. The resolution will now go to a full vote of DNC members if it passes. The election for those two vice chair roles will be re-administered. They'll have a new election. This challenge comes from a losing candidate in February's vice chair race. Her name is Kaylin Free, who alleges David Hogg and Malcolm Kenyatta were elected under a flawed tabulation process. So what happened? Was it ballot harvesting? Was it voter machine nonsense? Was it the old broken pipe at 1 a.m.? No, this election is flawed because it is alleged to have violated the party's gender diversity rules.
Right.
David Hogg to be ousted by gender diversity rules. The challenge, as I said, is actually unrelated to David Hogg and his effort or his plan to primary Democrats. And the challenge was filed 2 months ago. So it actually isn't like some way to find a way to get him. This challenge was filed before he made that announcement. It's only now being adjudicated. So the party's rules state that the DNC's governing body should achieve gender parity or get as close as possible. So this woman, Free, is arguing that Kenyatta and Hogg had access to more votes than Free and two other women running for that slot did. I forget how this played out. It's because they voted for two people at once instead of separately or something like that. But the way it was structured, she says, advantaged men over women because of how the numbers broke down or something like that. And so she said it made it impossible for any woman to win the race. So David Hogg... David Hogg wants to settle this. Just become a woman. Just transition and stop messing around. Doesn't seem that hard.
It's like not far. Yeah.
You need like a bow in your hair and you're done.
Literally, like you don't even need to declare. Like just stop resisting.
So technically, this doesn't have anything to do with David Hogg's primary challenge or what is his plan for those things. But it kind of will, because if this challenge is successful in the full vote of DNC members upcoming on these technical gender roles, well, that means what? It means revote. And when that revote happens for DNC vice chair, David Hogg, I assume, is going to try to hold his seat. Members are now going to vote on whatever criteria they want. And the criteria on which they're voting, that's changed since February. Now, David Hogg is telling Democrats, I'm coming after you in Congress. And they may vote to avoid that. So even if it technically has nothing to do with that, people are going to vote with that consideration. And it may be a source of punishment for David Hogg. But this is where it gets really interesting. Because there's an argument that David Hogg's civil rights have now been violated. I thought this is going to be like some bullshit progressive argument. No, this is going to be a great alliance if it happens. My stream is dropping. Stand by here. Connection's dropping out. Maybe it's coming back.
That's right. Yeah, I lost you. I think
you got me now?
I think it's Zoom. I've still got you here, but I lost you.
Yeah, my connection just dipped for a second, but now it looks good. So Tim will hop in and tell me if something's wrong. But Harmeet Dillon, of course, a longtime Trump associate and current assistant attorney general for civil rights at the Justice Department, says David Hogg should file a complaint saying his civil rights have been violated. She says he may have experienced illegal discrimination resulting from diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. So David Hogg.
So David Hogg is going to use, like, I'm assuming that would have to be new Trump legislation going against DEI.
There's some, like, I think they did an executive order on it in the federal government, or I don't know what authority they would have.
There's no way that was under Biden, right? So this has got to be something new that the Democrats are going to use to get in.
Pursuant to a Trump executive order. But this, remember, this applies to the party too, not the government itself. So I think the legal jurisdiction here is very dicey. My point is, though, if you have Trump DOJ officials hand in hand with David Hogg trying to take out the DNC, this is going to be a popcorn-worthy show for sure. David, I figured he probably would not be open to such a thing, but he didn't say, like, yeah, I'm going to work with Trump's DOJ to try to resolve this. On Bill Maher's show on Friday night, though, he did say, frankly, I don't think it even makes sense for us to have the gender balance rules anymore in this day and age, because I want to focus on whoever's just best for the job. So, okay.
Oh, what the hell? Wow. Yeah, this is not going to work. Because I hadn't heard much about this story. I'd only seen him on someone else. It was like Conan or someone, where he was saying we need to start appealing to young men.
Yeah.
And then I thought that was what got him ousted, because they're like, we don't do that over here. Yeah. And you are one, so get out. Yeah. Like, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but I think that is a good way of summing it up, basically, except it is kind of interesting that the other angle that he's going after the old guard, and that's actually why they're after him.
Yeah, strategically, I don't know that that's the smartest use of resources. However, I don't think he's way off. You know, like, if you have old Republican or Democrat, you have old established members of Congress in safe districts who don't do anything ever. It is just a career for them and they leech off the public. Yeah, I mean, I kind of like that he's into ousting those people. Now, if I'm the Democrat Party, I understand why they would say,
yeah, it's not a good way to get into a position of power in that party. You gotta, like, get there and then do that, or be an insurgent like Trump.
But just as an American, I can appreciate where David Hogg is coming from. I can't believe I'm uttering that sentence, but I don't have a problem with that. Like, as a guy, it makes sense that the party itself is going to be like, no, get the hell out of here. Yeah. That's not what they exist to do. But David Hogg said on Monday, in response to this vote that could potentially oust him, while this vote was based on how the DNC conducted its officers' elections, which I had nothing to do with, it is also impossible to ignore the broader context of my work to reform the party which loomed large over this vote. He described the country in crisis and a Democrat Party asleep at the wheel. David Hogg would know because he is a fantastic crisis actor. He knows a fake crisis when he sees one. So
we don't need $1 billion lawsuit, Matt. Careful.
That's true.
People died.
That was
Everybody died.
Hook. Sandy Hook was totally real, but David Hogg is a crisis actor, and if I get a defamation lawsuit for that, so be it.
Yeah, let's do some.
I'll just be the Alex Jones sequel that nobody
Discovery.
When's this redo vote coming? If they actually vote to do it, unclear. I didn't see that in the reporting. To be determined. So we'll have to come back to the David Hogg story. All right. Before I hop into some calls, I want to leave you a little bit of space just to talk about the Canadian election. I have a couple questions that might prompt something, some interest from you, but just broadly speaking, state of your country, what happened with the elections, your thoughts?
It's hard. It's incredible how disinterested I've become in the whatever 10, 12 days it's been since it happened. Because, I mean, usually Canadians love paying attention to American politics because it's way more exciting. And Canada's always been sort of that safe place because it's boring and nothing ever happens. And this is kind of a return to that. And I kind of almost don't care because what Carney did that was smart is he ran to the center, and our conservatives were running to the center, and there was barely any daylight between the two parties. And so it was, whichever way it went, it was so far from what I would have wanted that I'm just kind of like, we're going to be fucked anyways, and now we're fucked, and I'm just like, I just want it to be over. Like,
so you think even
I don't care anymore.
Had Pierre become prime minister, you're still screwed. Like, would not have been major.
If you want to know what Canadian conservatives will be like in power, look at the UK. Look at Boris Johnson. Look at that party. Look at what they're led by a minority immigrant. Polyev was going around campaigning at like Sikh events and pandering to every minority group, not even mentioning slowing down immigration. He's just talking about we're going to build more homes, we're going to be more successful. And the interesting thing is both the front runners, Carney and Polyev, are from Alberta, and they're very similar. Like, if people don't know that Carney was actually put in place by Stephen Harper, who was the previous conservative leader and a pretty good he's not hated as much in Canada as he was previously. He was a decent prime minister, but he signed us up to all of the UN's pacts on immigration and Agenda 2030 and all that stuff as a conservative. And so like our conservatives are just very milquetoast, very liberal, very middle of the road. And Carney has been running to the right. Like, he's come out, he said he's not going to work with the far left New Democrat Party. He's going to try and get a trade deal with Trump. He wants to open up the pipelines. Like, it's interesting. Like, if you look at Keir Starmer right now in the UK, he's coming out against immigration and saying stuff that Boris never would have, because he's not scared of the left. So he's got license to actually come out and say things that are relatively based. And that's what's going on right now with Carney. He's coming out and saying stuff that I don't think Polyev ever would have, because he's too chicken shit. So it's like, I don't know, it's just weird and gay and stupid.
Maybe the premise of my question, well stated. Maybe the premise of my question here is off
like our
because,
country,
because if you're saying like, well, maybe the distinction between the two is not very wide, but if you accept the distinction between Pierre, impossible to pronounce name, and Carney, Who is at fault for the loss of the Conservatives? Is it Trump for picking the fight with Canada? Is it Pierre for being an ineffective campaigner? Is it a combination of both? Who is to blame if you're a pro-Conservative Party perspective?
It's actually all three evenly.
Okay.
Carney ran a brilliant campaign. Trump helped Carney, and Poilievre fucked himself. So Carney just looked at the state of Canada. He knew everybody hates Trudeau. Everybody thinks it's far left. And Poilievre's ideas were popular, sort of middle of the road, like, let's not be insane. And so Carney just took what was sort of popular out of the Conservative platform, and Poilievre did nothing to respond to it. Kept up the exact same campaign. He should have run to the right immediately and said, we're going to cancel immigration. I'm going to unite the right, as he should have, and run as a real actual right winger, not a progressive, conservative, middle of the road milquetoast guy. And he didn't. He stayed in the middle lane, talked shit about Trump. He should have said, I want to be the governor of the 51st state. Here's how it works. We could be independent. We could be proud. Like, he should have just gone balls to the wall, and he didn't. He pussied out. Like, that's what he's done. Even during the trucker convoy,
he should move
did
to
nothing.
South Africa and become a farmer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Poilievre waits till he knows which way the wind is blowing, and then he puts up his sails. And there wasn't enough time for him to adjust, because I don't think he can think on his feet. And Trump didn't do him any favors, because Trump doesn't like him, because Trump senses that about him.
Do you think Trump wanted Carney to win? Do you think there's truth to that, or is it just incidental?
Possibly, because I think either he sees, because if Poilievre had won, Canada might exist for another 10, 15 years. But with Carney in, the odds of us collapsing completely are much higher.
Becoming the 51st state. And the last thing I'm curious about, when I was reading about Alberta and the semi-serious talk of leaving Canada in Alberta, there is something of a legal right to secede for them. Now, it's not unilateral. They can't just pack up and leave. But they have a legal right to be recognized per all the crazy stuff that went on with the French people, like back in the 90s. Yeah. So do you think Alberta is actually serious about this? Do you think any of this stuff will move or advance, or is it just talk?
I think they are, and I think Carney knows they are. Like I said, he's from there. He understands the people, and that's why I don't know if he actually means it, but he's making the right mouth sounds, and he's doing things to try to appease them enough to bring the temperature down, because again, it's never been pulled off in Canada, but there's always, Quebec's been trying to separate since the founding of Confederation, and the precedent is there ideally, although it's never been achieved. But yeah, I mean, something like 60% of the people in Alberta would like to separate. And not just that, the Western diaspora, like myself, would seriously consider moving back in a minute if they did join the U.S. So there's a lot of support from around Canada of Canadians who are sick of the bullshit and would go back there.
Wait a minute.
So, I don't know if that answers your question.
Am I understanding, like, are you saying Canadians would have a path to become American that way? Like,
well, I don't know. I don't know how.
What if you just, if Alberta was about to secede with a plan to join the U.S. and say you're in Quebec, right?
Yeah.
So you you head west.
I'm in the heart of the devil's asshole. I'm in downtown Montreal.
Right. Yeah. So you just head down whatever you call the interstates in Canada, and you go down to Calgary for
the 101.
You get a mailing address in Calgary like 5 seconds before Alberta leaves. Can you become American that way? Like, there's got to be a cutoff.
I mean, again, there would have to be some kind of. I mean, I'm from Saskatchewan. My family's still all there, and I have family in every province from Ontario west. I'm the only one really out here on the east side. But yeah, I don't know how that would work. I never thought about what would, because I mean, we don't even really have. I mean, healthcare is kind of provincial, and like our system is a lot more. Yeah, our system is a lot more federally controlled than the U.S. one. Like I remember getting an argument with someone who's like, "Well, Canada should actually join the European Union, where we could like, be our own state, but be part of like a larger thing." I was like, "Do you know what the United States is?" Like, well, it was good enough for Texas. we could still be Canadians, and we would be autonomous, and we would, like states' rights.
Well,
right? Like,
what the U.S. is in
concept.
principle. What it is in practice is getting closer and closer to the faulty stuff you're describing. But
hey, listen, from an outsider looking in, it's like it's still the city on the hill.
We still have some semblance of states' rights and states handling their own affairs, but it's definitely not what it used to be.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's thank you for the update. I appreciate that. And Godspeed.
Canada remains fake and gay. There you go. Nothing has changed.
Let's hop into some callers here. I got Justin up first. I got to unmute myself. Justin, are you there?
Say again?
Aren't you? You're not? Did I confuse you guys again? You're not Justin?
No, I'm not Justin.
You're okay. You're the guy with the other Chinese sounding name. Sorry.
Chinese. It's Star Wars Extended Universe, but whatever.
It sounds Chinese. All right. This is a duct tape production, and somewhere Justin is listening, laughing at me. Sorry, Vong. Go ahead.
Okay. Real quick, is your guest supposed to have his mic muted, or am I supposed to be able to hear him?
Can you?
Oh, do I got to do something?
You might have to unmute yourself in Discord. Mark. Yep. How about now?
Yeah. Hang on. Give me a second. Can you hear me now?
There we go. Yes. I can hear you
awesome.
Now.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hello, good sir. So,
hello to you.
Before we begin, as usual, the traditional sip from the Chat Tard Tears mug.
The Chat what mug?
Jar of Tears,
Chat
I believe.
Tard Tears.
Chat Tard Tears mug.
Okay.
Chat Tard Tears.
I didn't know there was such a mug.
Say that 6 times.
But all right, what do you got?
So, I wanted to say a little bit about the new Pope, because I was listening both this past Wednesday and on Sunday, and Matt, as you may or may not recall, I am a traditional Catholic. And
that's right. I remember our conversations.
Yes, I'm sure you do. So there's a lot of stuff that people are saying, and I find myself deeply disappointed by a lot of people who I thought would know better than to go off what the mainstream media says, because, for example, immediately after the announcement of the election of now Pope Leo XIV, I immediately started doing all the research I possibly could. And, well, quite frankly, even for someone like me who knows exactly where to look for the most detailed pieces of information possible, there was very little that could be found about his stances on various topics over the years, etc. This is a man who has played his cards extremely close to his chest his entire life. Okay? And so I was kind of disappointed in a lot of people who were trying to say, oh, he's going to follow Pope Francis and all this stuff and that. And although, honestly, look, I don't mean to be a jerk, and Frank, if you're ever listening, love you to death, man. This isn't a personal attack, but a lot of this stuff about him following Francis, just no. The Cardinals elected by Francis, there's a lot more to that than people talked about.
How dare you?
Nobody calls out Frank on my show and gets away with it.
Uh-oh.
All right, closing thought.
I had heard that his brother had been posting based things. Is that
I did
true?
hear that.
Yes, I did hear that as well, and he said a lot of stuff in the past few days that gives traditionalists like me much reason to be very hopeful.
Okay,
that
awesome.
said, you asked for final words. Well, the good Lord says to us that we are the light of the world and the salt of the earth. So, quote Dr. Taylor Marshall, go out there and be salty.
Thank you. Yeah. Appreciate your update, because he's already out of here. I've followed the Pope stuff to the best of my ability. I am not the most, like South Africa. That's not an area of expertise for me.
Mm-hmm.
But even though I've seen what this Pope has said or implicitly said about, say, Trump and JD Vance through retweets and other posts, I try not to be extremely judgmental as a sort of an outsider there, to say that he's totally wrong about all aspects of Catholic doctrine because he made a retarded tweet once or something like that. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of this Pope, but it is interesting if Vong is correct that this is a guy who not only on, social media or just internet presence has sort of held his cards about things within the church or religious theology stuff. Yeah, I guess I wonder on what basis was he selected if his, I mean, clearly Cardinals must know.
What do they know that we don't know? But I mean, usually from what I see when people are keeping their cards close, it's because their opinions are generally seen as unpopular, which to me means I'll probably like them.
That very well could be the case. Yeah. Yeah, maybe.
Here's hoping.
Even
I don't know.
Francis,
I'm not an expert on Catholic stuff.
When Francis died, I went through a lot of his stances and a lot of his words with another guest of mine who's much more well-read in these things. And even though Francis is branded as like a sort of a progressive pope or a guy who rejected a lot of traditional viewpoints, practices, that sort of stuff. And he did. I'm not just saying he was viewed that way. There were things he did that were at odds with tradition within the church, as far as I understand. But he also had a lot of stances that were very clear on pressing moral issues. I think of his stance on surrogacy. He was pretty clear on abortion and all these things.
Yeah, so, he's like a 90s gay.
He's properly closeted. He's a good
sort of
man.
Based in this, like, I don't gotta stop here.
Yeah. No, I just mean like, without a thorough understanding, my understanding of politics within the Catholic Church is, it's a little weird. It's hard to categorize cleanly in the way we think of like progressives and conservatives out there just in politics generally. I don't know that what goes on in the Catholic Church breaks down that cleanly, as far as I understand, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Hey, Canadian Egg. Mr. Egg, are you there?
I am. How are you doing tonight?
You're the right kind of egg for this conversation. Are you, in fact, in Canada?
I am. In fact, I'm in Alberta.
Oh, so
nice.
Welcome.
Awesome.
You're going to join us very soon. But what do you want to talk about?
You know what? I'm really starting to hope so. You know.
What?
I didn't. That will be joining us soon. You know, I would potentially like Alberta to be its own country, but I wouldn't, depending on what the deal is. I'll say this quick. Stupid people just say no when proposed that idea. When I think the right answer is, well, what's the deal?
Yeah.
Of being their own country. Do you think Alberta could sustain itself as a
not Alberta on its own? No, not Alberta. If it was just you cut Alberta out of Canada and try and make its own country, no, I don't think Alberta could sustain itself.
Yeah, it would have to have Saskatchewan and like the eastern half of BC. You'd want Manitoba?
I don't know. Access to the bay. But
yeah,
I think
that's about it.
Guys, that's about it. I think you guys talked about Canada well enough. I came on today that talked about the refugee situation.
Yeah.
And how basically the argument is over for refugees, but I don't think that conservatives or the right or whatever is going to learn from it and hold the mainstream lefties to account whenever they bring up refugees from now on. Because the lefties for years have used refugee as a word that means 65 IQ Somali freeloader.
It is itself
that's
a euphemism.
My definition. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's their definition too. They're now admitting it when they say people that might actually contribute a little bit to society and say that these aren't real refugees.
Yeah, exactly. They don't qualify.
They're actually being persecuted by their own government.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is I think that people aren't going to hold them to account now whenever they go, well, what about refugees? And what about these refugees? You have to let the Somali and his 18 family members into the country so they can live on the public dollar.
So do you think that maybe this whole thing was a trap by the Trump administration to destroy their narrative about refugees?
I don't think it was. I don't think he thought that far. No. But it works out in that favor. But I don't think I think he probably actually just thought this is a legitimate cause for refugees, and I think he should let more in because this has been going on for over 10 years. Like when did Lauren Southern's thing come out? 10 years ago.
A while ago.
And then real quick, it's funny how always every time this whole whenever like how quickly on CNN the blood and soil Nazi narrative came up, where she's talking about well they should go back to Germany.
Yeah.
It all of a sudden became blood and soil, but you can only talk about that when you're talking about Africa. Just like in Canada when we do we want to recognize that we're on the land of treaty whatever number. It's like that's Nazi blood and soil talk.
Yeah. Oh no, and it's like and we paid for it. That's what the treaty was. And it's still not ours. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I am so sick of it.
I know, me too. I know, but
well,
I've never heard of stolen land that's still being paid for. How does that work?
Fair point.
I mean, it's, you know what, we're just really shitty thieves.
Yeah. That's it. The Anglo are the only people in the history of the world that I'm aware of to win a war of conquest and then pay the losers in perpetuity.
Well, thank you for the call,
Which is all of
Canadian
Canada.
Nick. And I look forward to being able to drive up to your part of the country freely someday soon.
Hey, Matt, you know, I do love Montana. It's my second favorite state after Alaska, because Alaska's just drop dead gorgeous. But I would like to, if Alberta doesn't, whatever happens up here, I want to stay in Alberta, but I might find myself in Montana one day. Because it's basically just more Alberta with not as good steak.
Really? We have you beat in steak, you say?
No,
Alberta has Montana beat in steak. I see what you're saying. Okay.
Oh yeah, AAA Alberta beef, nothing better. You're not going to find anything better.
I don't. Well, now a challenge accepted. Now I want a taste test. Maybe we'll be able to do that someday. All right. Thank you, man.
Is there a lot of? Cheers. Good night. Is there a lot of ranching in Alberta? I mean, in Montana?
Oh yeah,
you know, Matt. Yeah.
Haven't you ever seen Yellowstone? You think you have better steak than John Dutton? Get the hell out of here.
I watched 2 episodes and I avoid it like the plague.
What? Yeah. It is a great show, but
I watched Landman, which is like it's as good as I hoped Yellowstone would be. But no, Yellowstone, it was just too much, just like random bad things happening for no reason. I couldn't.
I like Landman is Sheridan, right? Taylor Sheridan.
No, it's Billy Bob Thornton.
Oh no, but is Taylor Sheridan the creator, writer?
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay, if it's a Sheridan product, I probably like it because pretty much everything in the Yellowstone universe I've enjoyed to varying degrees. None of it's been crap. Even though like anything, I think I have some questions about the final.
Maybe I just have to get Pat into the second season or something.
I don't know if you didn't.
I didn't like Mad Men until season 4.
I think Yellowstone was strongest fairly early. So if you didn't like it after a few episodes, probably not. But the only thing I might suggest is checking out 1883, like the prequel that shows the Dutton family coming from like Texas up to Montana to establish the ranch in 1883.
Oh, yeah?
Really, really good series. That's probably the best thing that Sheridan's done. And I like it's just a great show. And it's fairly short. I think it's 1 season. It's Tim McGraw and Faith Hill as the patriarch and matriarch of the Dutton family. They're everybody in it is great. But yeah, really, really good show. It's it's 1 season, like 8 episodes, 10 episodes, something like that.
Okay, yeah, I think because I remember seeing a tweet about Landman, and it was someone had tweeted about it in reference to Yellowstone, saying like, how does this guy keep getting away with being allowed to make good stuff? It's like, watch Landman, you're like, how the hell? And it was made by like MTV.
Yeah,
it's like, how did he get like them? Because it's just based right-wing talking points over and over and over on top of a decent storyline.
Yeah, I know some people had some criticism of Yellowstone. Yellowstone went woke or something. Like there were elements of it here and there, but it fundamentally was not a quote unquote woke show. I mean, it's a show about the collision between tradition and modernity and trying to preserve a way of life against, city slicker influx, which, is something I can relate to, even though my way of life is not cattle ranching. But
aren't you the city slicker influx?
I might be. But I'm not. I want the ranch preserved. Okay, I'm Team Dutton in that.
You're not a developer. I'll stay away.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not seeking to eliminate the Dutton Ranch from the map. That said, I'm not. The hardcore environmentalists, like no development ever, piss me off too, though. So I guess I hate them all. But
there you go.
Yeah,
you should move to Canada. We have a place for you here.
Yeah, maybe we'll become.
You can help us vote to. Self-demolish.
Alberta, Montana would be such a cool combo state, probably like.
Oh, because the funny thing is that if you look at Canada and America's political geography, it's identical. Right? Like our East Coast, our Montreal and Toronto are New York. And then our Midwest is your Midwest. They're very politically, they're identical. The people are very similar, and even ethnically, everything. We're cousins at the furthest. We're very closely related. People came from the same place. The only difference is that when you guys got a 3% tax and said, "Screw this, we're fighting a war to rebel," Canadians were like, "We kind of like taxes."
You know, I've had, it's been a while, but I remember there was there a caller on this show? Someone called in and like made the case for the crown in the American Revolution. It was kind of interesting. You know, I assume Canada bought into that bullshit because they stuck around.
Well, we're just kind of pussies because we like wanted the crown but didn't.
Yeah.
So we're like, yeah, well, we're a Commonwealth-ish, but not, and kind of a crown, but not really. And we're like, want to have our cake and eat it too. Not quite confident enough to actually be sovereign, but we'll pretend we're sovereign so we can justify our we're better than those stupid Americans. Like literally, it's just ego and pride, and that's the one we define ourselves in opposition to you, crazy bastards south of the border.
When the Canadian election happened the other week, I played a clip of I never like to think one voter being interviewed on CNN is representative, but it was an old boomer woman being like, I just hate Trump and I voted for who's going to stand up to Trump the most. And it's like, I'd like to think she's just a kook. And then you look at the voting breakdown demographically and it's like a bunch of olds who vote left wing and their primary motivator is we hate Trump. And everybody who's younger than like 40 is like, I don't know, I can't afford anything and I can't live. The breakdown of who voted for whom and why in the Canadian federal election was fascinating. It was like night and day different.
Yeah. But it's again, and I don't even blame the boomers necessarily because they're just following incentives. And these are the knock-on effects of 40 years of bad policy where we have no retirement plan. We have no economy. We don't make anything. And so basically what we did is prop up the whole boomer generation by appreciating values on their properties. And we did that through immigration. And so they're not going to vote to you want to change the things that are systemically wrong with this country? Your parents are going to be moving in with you because their house is going to be worthless. They've already got they've taken out 3 mortgages on it so they can take a cruise every 6 months. And it's a house of cards. And if you want to fix it, everybody's going to hurt. So, you know, I don't like them. But I don't blame them for voting for what's good for them.
You understand the
over
boomer.
Their progeny. Yeah, exactly. I'm a boomer whisperer. I'm like, I get it. Yeah.
All right. Last call's going to Bruce. Bruce, are you there?
Hello.
What's on your mind, sir?
Hi, Bruce.
Hey, nice to chat with you guys again, and to make this an Alberta takes over stream.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. I got to get you on here with Batman sometime. Now that you and Batman have a feud, we have to resolve this.
At least I'm just glad to hear you have a lot of Canadian listeners because I get some shit in the comments on the last one because I was calling Americans liberals, but that's a long story.
Yeah.
American conservatives are liberals. You guys, it's a revolution. You need a king.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Bruce.
Hold up the Canadian quote.
Yeah, last time I was on here, talked a little bit about tariffs, and one of the good questions that Mark was tossing is what are the reasons for the tariffs? And so I think over the past couple of weeks, it's kind of developed as far as what are the actual reasons in my theory. The one is that it is a new tax for Trump to generate revenue for the country. And that seems pretty substantiated because even with the UK deal, there's no there still is going to be the base 10% regardless where you're coming from. I think the other thing is that he's really is going after stopping subsidizations of industries and currency manipulation. And you can see that whenever he talks about trade deficits and them being, really large, but they're because of subsidizations. You can see this especially with Chinese EVs. And I just think that's a little interesting because I don't know how you can stop other countries from subsidizing while at the same time your country also subsidizes. So when it comes to the film industry, I think Sargon mentioned that, or somebody mentioned, and it might have been the drinker, or mentioned that the Hollywood subsidizes 20%, but UK will subsidize by 25%. And just to lastly finish up, I think it's also a distraction policy to distract from other things that he's doing, which are good things like his immigration reforms.
Why would he want to distract from good things, though? I'm not sure I understand that theory.
Well, the fact is there's just tons of insane amount of leftists and people that really, normies that wouldn't be able to understand. And, the amount of people that fell for whatever the Minnesota man or whatever man it was.
Yeah.
Oh, Maryland,
Wisconsin.
Father. There are many.
Yeah,
there are many
man.
fathers and mans. Yeah, it's getting confusing.
Yeah,
and I think
so
you
it's
just mean distract. He's distracting the media while he's, it's a bait and switch.
Yeah, you mean
look
like
over
good,
here while he's doing something important in the background.
What rational people might consider good, but what the media considers to be Hitler behavior is what you're saying.
Yeah, or normies that aren't actually paying attention to like what's underneath. They just think, oh, he's just scooping up random people and throwing them to El Salvador.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I
Yeah.
mean,
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just gonna say the tariff stuff is tough. Like right now, you see, I've heard that even CNN came out yesterday and said they called it a Trump victory in the whatever trade agreement it was that we've reached with China. But I mean, yeah, the tariffs are a negotiating tool, and if you want to look big picture, Canada, and this is why I'm still not sure about Carney, because Canada is kind of like it's where the turf war is happening between Trump and the Chi-Coms, and we're stuck in the middle because we're geopolitically important, and we are basically run by China.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Canada, I think the reason why Trump wanted Carney to win is because it weakens. I think what he's trying to do is weaken Canada to a point that he can get whatever deal he wants, because Canada will be begging for whatever they can get.
So what do you think about Carney now governing more to the middle and kind of trying to play nice in a way? He's like, we'll have pipelines, we'll do this, because he's trying to sort of cut Trump's legs out and keep Alberta satisfied enough that we don't break up. Well, probably, I mean, long run, probably fucking us over huge, but who knows?
I don't believe Carney. I think what he's saying is the fact that he says a lot of different things. I think what he's talking about is more to lower the temperature of Alberta separation.
Yeah.
And I think that if you look at like his cabinet, it's pretty much Trudeau 2.0.
Yeah, I haven't seen, because I heard he replaced like 20 people. I haven't looked into any of them yet, but I'm expecting a nightmare.
Yeah, well, pretty much he shuffled a lot of people. Okay. A lot of the big name people all stayed. They just got shuffled to different posts. And the lesser known people, like they were deputy ministers underneath the previous cabinet, so they're pretty much the same.
All right.
The only good person is Hodgson.
That's enough Canada talk.
It's more same old. Yeah, we're killing the show here. We gotta. This is all. This is not Canada talk, Matt. This is future U.S. talk.
Right. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for calling in. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had the tariff conversation a few times, and it's
hard.
That's
right?
the continued source of
it's
frustration. Is the mystery motive or the mystery goal? It's what are we doing here? What are we trying to achieve?
The problem is it's Trump.
Yeah.
And there's like I've heard a lot of people say this, and I think there's some truth to it, that he's really a kind of gut instinct guy, and he tries things, sees how they work, and then changes. I don't really think there's like a long-term plan for it each. He's like, his motivations are good. That's what I like about him. I believe that he loves America and the American people and wants what's best for them. But I think he's kind of shoot from the hip, see what happens in it, switch on a dime if it doesn't, which works kind of good. Luckily in international politics, but good luck trying to predict what the hell he's going to do or why. It's like someone told him try this, and so he did.
All right, I got a couple email questions before we finish up tonight. As a reminder, if you'd like to send an email for consideration on the show, you can do that through the contact page on my website, mattchristiansenmedia.com/contact. Look for the MC Live questions box. And I realize I never put these on the screen, and sometimes they're hard to... It's hard to hear them. Sometimes it's easier for people to read them, to think about them. So I'm going to try doing that. But first one's from Nate. Matt, I'm going to have to disagree with you, and winter is coming from last week. The question an emailer from last week. Morality is instilled top down. When we are children, our parents instill us with morality. If they fail, church, school, and other institutions fill the gap. If they fail, the state teaches morality through law and the threat of violence. For example, transgenderism has never enjoyed majority support in the United States, but political and cultural elites have reshaped all of society to support it. Once the acceptance was pushed via the media and court rulings, acceptance increased. If the state can't teach morality, how do you explain this change? I can't remember exactly what was said, if it was last week or the week prior. I can't go back to the exact context of that question, but I'll take this question on its own. I actually don't think we disagree all that much, or maybe we have a misunderstanding, because I suspect that we would agree that morality doesn't originate with people, that people don't create it, or it's not a human invention, that it originates with God, it pre-exists us. It's an objective set of rules outside of us. And Nate, I assume you may agree with that. If not, correct me and we can carry on from there. But yeah, I would agree. It is our parents' job to teach us those rules, to get us in touch with those rules, to understand those rules so that we can navigate this world. If your parents don't teach you the rules get taught to you anyway. And I remember talking about this with that question, like this set of rules that exists over all of us and before all of us, if you don't learn it and obey it, you're going to go out into the world and get punched in the face one way or another. It might be literally punched in the face because you're breaking all the rules and acting like an insane person. You're going to be stopped. So that's why parents have an obligation to teach their children this set of rules, and I think we'd agree on that. The government, when I say the government doesn't teach morality, I don't mean to say they don't try. They certainly try. I just mean I don't think that they are effective in doing that, or that they have a legitimate role in doing that. We have a justice system to enforce morality, but that morality is through the convictions of the people. The government is supposed to reflect that through the justice system. The government attempting to be moral teacher, as though they are a church leader or as though they are your parent, that generally gets corrupted into propaganda, which is the problem that you're describing. Morally bankrupt politicians trying to confuse moral truth in the context of transgenderism or other contexts. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it the proper purpose of government. Government exists to reflect the people, and when it doesn't, it's corrupt. But that's why it has to have limitations on it, or it's supposed to. And so what you're describing here, in my opinion, is the problem. Government does a very poor job of teaching morality, so it shouldn't really be in that role. Now, on the question of how do I explain the dynamic you're describing, this dynamic that the government has propagandized everyone into accepting or loving transgenderism, I would explain it that way. It's not government teaching morality. It's government confusing morality, teaching degeneracy, and that's the problem. But I actually question the premise here, or whether that dynamic is correctly described. When I say I question the premise being that transgender acceptance is primarily a government messaging function. I think it's a function of many things. It could be government messaging, but there's college campuses, there's media portrayals, there's social pressure in your school or your place of work. Like, you will believe this or you'll be punished, that sort of thing. Now, you do say in the question, cultural elites are pushing this, so maybe we agree on that. But if we agree that there are cultural elites pushing this, it's a different force than government influence, although they might be closely related. Anyway, when I say I question the premise, I really question the premise that all of society has been reshaped to support transgenderism. I gather that you're exaggerating there for a fact. Like, you don't mean literally everybody, but you're saying that opinions on transgender acceptance are moving in the direction of acceptance or even promotion. The opinions vary pretty widely, and for the most part are actually pretty restrictive and trending in a restrictive direction. If you look at some Gallup polling from just, when was this dated? February. Majorities favor banning men and women's sports. Majorities favor banning gender transition medical interventions for children. Majorities favor banning elementary schools from teaching about gender identity issues. Banning men from women's public bathrooms is about 50-50. But the other notable thing about these trends is they're all trending more restrictive as a matter of public opinion since 2022. This is according to Gallup. It's one poll. You can say it's crap, but I think this is pretty strongly supported in other polls too. And there's a lot of policy changing to reflect those views. many states and the federal government are getting more restrictive, not less restrictive. And I think these opinions are shifting in a restrictive direction as well. And that would be contrary to the prevailing political opinion at the time, dating back to 2022, which was the Biden era, at least the president. So what is shifting these opinions? It wasn't necessarily political leadership. Something else is shifting them. I think it's defiance of moral truth, and that moral truth naturally enforcing itself. But I appreciate the question, and yeah, thanks for the thoughts. Mark, did you have anything you want to add to that one?
Yeah, there's a lot you could get into there, but it reminded me where he was saying that or you who said that there's the government and the media and the institutions, and this reminds me of, that's what Curtis Yarvin calls the cathedral, which is the combination of the three. And if you read libertarian philosophy, Murray Rothbard's Anatomy of the State, which is a great little 10, 20 page pamphlet to read, he really elucidates how the three are one and they work in conjunction with each other. That doesn't really necessarily say anything, because again, America is such a unique government structure. Getting back into what is left wing, what is right wing, with your three branches of government, it's the first time I think in history where they tried to blend left, right, and not even sided, with where you have the executive being the right wing, sort of the sovereign, and then you have the Supreme Court being your council of elders, and then you have the Senate, not the Senate, but where you have your, what do you call it, where the people Congress are elected. That's the Congress is your democracy, and you sort of have the blend of all three types of government squished together with checks and balances against each other. And so even when you take a libertarian argument against the state being the cathedral, or the combination of the government and the institutions and the media, you still have, it's still more complicated than that. But morality should come from, it does come top down, but it should come through the church and the family top down and be taught. It's not innate. That's for sure.
Yeah. So. And I think, I suspect Nate would probably agree on that. I think we're probably all on board with that. Like maybe my separation of the so-called elites here between like the cultural elites and the government elites, maybe that's not a meaningful distinction. But the meaningful distinction is the source of the morality itself. And when we get confused and we think people define it, and it comes from these very wise men and these powerful institutions who tell us what right and wrong are, I gather that's kind of what goes on in church too. You're listening to very wise men in powerful positions. However, fundamentally in a religious context, we are all appealing to something higher than us, something above us, something that pre-existed us. When I'm just looking at a politician, it's like, that's a guy who I guess got votes or put on a nice suit, but he doesn't necessarily have moral authority over me in a way that God does. And when we confuse those two people, that's when you get problems.
Yeah. Well, morality, in the way I see it, is like math. We didn't invent it. We discovered it.
Yes, correct.
And the more we can work to be in line with it, the better our stuff will function.
Yes.
Right? Like engineering, the more you actually get your math right, your bridge will stand, your planes will fly. And when you start thinking 2 + 2 = 5, shit's going to get bad. And morality is the same way. It pre-exists us. It exists outside of us. And our job is to align ourselves properly with the logos or whatever it is. The truth,
math teacher guy telling you 2 + 2 = 5 doesn't make it any more true. Exactly. He is not the one who defines that. Yeah. Thank you, Nate. I appreciate it. All right, next one is from Technically a Fed. Fed. Hey, Matt, I'm an officer in the Air Force.
That was the gayest Fed chat. Where did you get that sounder? That was good. Sorry.
Oh, you don't know that one?
I'm not insulting anybody. No.
It's the context.
That wasn't millennial woes, was it?
No. So during the January 6th, the night before January 6th, January 5th, 2021, Ray Epps was out doing Ray Epps things. You know Ray Epps?
Yeah. That was Millennial Woes who started chanting that at him.
No, it was Baked Alaska.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes.
But so Baked Alaska called him out because Ray Epps is saying, we're going to go into Congress tomorrow. No. Fed. But this is not Baked Alaska. This is Ted Cruz referencing that during a Senate hearing. Fed.
Explains everything.
It's just cleaner audio. So I like that one better.
Okay, yeah, that is the gayest version ever. Sorry to all the Ted Cruz fans out there.
Hey, I'm kind of a Ted head. And I like it. Well, bearded Ted
Canadian,
is cool.
So, I have to not hate him that much.
That's true. And haven't you heard Trump? Now he's beautiful Ted. Now he calls it
right. Yeah,
he's not lying Ted anymore.
Hey, listen, some people, Marco Rubio has become somewhat unhateable somehow magically. So it depends. People can change, I guess.
Beautiful Ted. I'm on board with beautiful Ted. Maybe he'll have redemption and become our name. I don't know. He's probably not
honest Ted.
It's the beard that changed his ways.
It was. It just became cool.
All right. Hey, Matt, I'm an officer in the Air Force Reserves. I wonder what your philosophy on the purpose of our national military is. I've heard a lot about what it was like at our nation's founding and about its purpose now, and I'd like to hear your opinion. Thanks. First of all, thanks for serving the country. Now, I can't speak confidently about the founding philosophy and practice on this. It's not something I've read a lot about. But if you ask me, like, what do I think the federal military exists to do, or what role does it have? It is an extension of the federal government, and I would assign the federal government's role to the federal military. The federal government exists to do primarily two things. Number one, collective defense of the states. So someone comes and attacks us, our federal military goes and gets them. And defense of the states can include border security. Obviously, if it's some kind of hostile invasion,
that should be like number one. No, that's defense of the border. That's like the thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the nature of it. We handle that generally through federal police forces now because there's a process that people are supposed to be pursuing. But if people are just disregarding the law and crossing in a physically aggressive way in that, they're not seeking to go through our ports and they're not seeking to use the process. To me, that is
shoot them.
That is a military situation. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
I don't understand how it's not. Like, you see those videos of like Poland, people who cut the fence and 30 soldiers show up in Humvees and get the fuck out of here. Yeah, that's how, to me, that's like you think everything always in my imagination, it relates to like some ancient sort of Spartan type civilization. I'm like, what is the army for? Well, you go out and fight over territory. That's what it does. And the border's like your territory.
That is the territory you must fight over. All others are kind of optional.
Yeah, you could go, there's adventurism, right? Yeah. But you shouldn't be out there if the one here is under attack.
Agreed. Okay, so you have collective defense of the states. You also have managing conflict between the states. The federal government, in its original design, is not supposed to be telling the states what to do. They handle their own affairs, but say two states are fighting, like I'm in Montana and hey, Idaho, fuck you, and we're lobbing mortars at each other or something.
Has that ever happened?
Well, we've had a civil war.
Yeah, but that was like the states versus the federal government,
right?
As far as I understand it.
Like
right?
two states fighting each other. I don't know that formally like state governments have declared war on each other. We've had like, I don't know, war-like things. I think like Hatfields and McCoys, although that wasn't cross-border, was it? But you might have something like that. If there's a conflict, a violent conflict between states, I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with the federal government's military just stopping that conflict. I don't want the federal government imposing its political will on the states through the military. But if it's peacekeeping between warring states, okay, I get it. So those are really the two roles I see the military filling. And I don't really think either of those points are controversial, but edge questions there need to be answered. What are the boundaries of collective defense of the states? It's very easy to say someone comes and attacks us here and we go get them. But to your question, I'm like, okay, isn't there something to be said about going and making sure the bad guys don't get us first, or like claiming territory, something like that? My philosophy on our military and its role in the world, I want to be very strong and mostly leave everyone else alone. If you mess with us, we are going to defeat you swiftly and with overwhelming force. But I don't want to be around policing the rest of the world's affairs. So in my own philosophy, it would be a strong but reserved military that wins necessary fights quickly. It is not deployed all over the globe fighting other people's wars and that kind of nonsense. Now, what are the boundaries of managing conflicts between the states? And this is where it gets interesting in that Civil War context. I mean, stop fighting between them, that's it. But what I want to be extra clear about, when I say the military has a role in managing the conflict between the states, I don't mean waging war against the states, which was done in the Civil War. I just mean if two states are fighting each other, we stop that fighting. And the question that follows there, does the federal government have a role then in stopping secession? And I don't think it does morally. Legally, you're going to get a different answer. We fought a war. What are you, some kind of Confederate apologist? As the guy Richard Stengel said, what are you, a lost causer? Are you a Confederate man? Morally speaking, any club that you can't leave is kidnapping. Okay?
Exactly. Well, and it's a politically instituted entity, right? So there should be a political exit possible.
Yes.
It wasn't formed through conquest. If it was, then it'd be a different thing. We beat you and you're ours now. But if you look at the United States or Canadian Confederation, these new type of countries, they were formed voluntarily. Therefore, you should be allowed to leave.
What is the philosophical basis of our government? It exists at the consent of the governed. When consent no longer exists, no longer the legitimacy of the government doesn't exist either.
Or admit that Lincoln conquered America and you're not getting out.
Sorry. A lot of stuff changed back then. You know,
did you see it was like the Lincoln Project tweeting about Trump suspending habeas corpus?
Yeah, we were talking about that on Sunday. Classic. That's one of those. It's like you can't be serious. You have to be trolling. So okay, maybe the Constitution. It's a frequent question too. Like, what's missing in the Constitution? How would you change it? Maybe an articulated way to leave the Union would be beneficial. I think morally, you have a right to leave the Union. You can leave the club if you want to leave the club, but maybe constitutionally, if we outlined a process for that, it would help settle that matter legally. But yeah, I don't believe in the federal government's or the federal government's military has any role in bullying the states into whatever compliance it wants, and that's really what was done in the Civil War. I think it just has a role as peacekeeper. You know, hey, Montana, you don't get to bomb Idaho. We're going to stop you from doing that. But other than that, police yourselves and live the way you want to.
Right. So can states have referendum to separate? I mean, I know it's only theoretical that I know, Scotland has tried and England tried with Brexit and Quebec has tried in Canada and no one's ever succeeded.
There is no
theoretically we could if we vote the right way, which is to stay.
My understanding is Canada is unique in that way with that Supreme Court ruling that from the Quebec attempted departure. Yeah, I mean, a state could vote all they want, and there's been a movement to do it in Texas for a long time, although I don't think the legislature has actually passed it, if I understand correctly. But let's say that like the Texas legislature passes a leave the union bill or whatever their process is, and they're all on board to leave.
Yeah, would they have to amend the Constitution in order to pull it off? And
you're going to get federal guns going down there, and you're going to get whoever's leading that ousted in the same way it happened in the Civil War.
Yeah.
And they're going to say there is no legal right because we settled this question in the Civil War. My problem with that is it's a might makes right argument. You mean to tell me that if the Confederacy and what's his face Lee? Why can't I think of his General Lee's first name? Robert E. Lee. If Robert E. Lee had just been like a little better, if he had his own Sherman to burn everything down. That you would have been saying, well, that was settled in the Civil War. You can leave anytime you want.
I heard it wasn't like the attack on Fort Sumter or something they had just known that it would have been over if they had just marched then and not waited. I don't know. I know.
Oh, the Confederates.
We actually learned about your Civil War in our history classes. Yeah,
my problem with we settled that with the war. It doesn't answer the moral question. Do you have a right to leave a club? Or don't you? And if you don't, you have to explain to me why you think the federal government is different from every other association you have. If I go into a book club and they say, I'm sorry, I know you think this book sucks and you don't want to talk about it, but they rack their Glock and they point it at my face and say, we're going to talk about the book because it's mandatory. That's false imprisonment. That's kidnapping. You have to explain to me why the federal government exists on a separate moral plane from the book club if you think we don't have a right to leave when we want to.
You're going to start getting into some sovereign citizen shit at some point here.
No, here's my counter on that.
Realize okay, well, how much of this when I've had my years and still am to some degree an objectivist of the Ayn Rand variety. Like things are what they actually are, not what they claim to be.
Yeah.
And, countries are corporations and you're a bitch and a slave and sorry. Yeah.
Here's my counter to that, because I understand you take that stance to the logical extent and you'd say, well, why can't anybody just become a sovereign citizen whenever they want and reject all forms of government? The genius, I think, of the American system is that it is balancing that need for an authority police figure with the rights of the individual and maximizing that consent of the individual. How is it maximized? You might not necessarily have the ability to leave everything, even though I think you can just straight up leave the U.S. physically and not be a citizen anymore if you want to be.
Yeah, you can renounce your citizenship.
But when the federal government no longer has the ability to push you around however it wants because it's appropriately restrained, if you don't like the way your state is handling things, you just leave and move to a different state. It's a much more plausible solution. And so if you feel like you're being completely abused by your government, and they are not responsive to your desire, or you're in some kind of slim minority where everybody's against you, you have the right to go to a different state. That is the balancing.
Yeah, but you don't
mechanism.
have the right to. You don't have the right to form a different state.
You do, there's a process.
And
for
that would be yeah. Because that
a different state. How do you define that? Under the federal government, or
I don't know. Right.
Yeah.
This is.
Or do you mean a separate country?
And then you're like, well, even a state. If you, the problem is all the land is like spoken for.
Yeah.
But ideally, you'd be able to say, I mean, this is kind of what they're doing with the Free State Project in New Hampshire. They're just trying to take over.
Yeah.
But what if you say, well, I want me and my buddies want to buy a piece of Montana and set up our own government? Could you? What's the process there?
Well, you'd have to work through the state of Montana and through Congress to establish a new state. There is a process to do that, assuming you're not trying to create a new country. If you're trying to create a new country, I would say that the state of Montana has the right to its boundaries. But if the state of Montana wants to leave, I don't have a problem with that. What were we fundamentally? A collection of almost sovereign states, effectively sovereign, or were we a bunch of people in a club with a centralized boss who tells them what to do and you can't leave the club? I think the answer in the founding is pretty clear.
Kind of both.
It's shifted, and that awesome guy, that awesome habeas corpus remover Lincoln changed a lot of that relationship. But
well, we had. I mean, Canada is we're a lot newer. We're 125 years or 130 something now since Confederation, and very, very recently, and it was just sort of disparate colonies and New British Columbia on the east side, and the prairies were the Wild West, and there was rebellions against them trying to form a federal government. And I'm still unconvinced that it works better as a thing. You guys seem to be one of the better examples of kind of pulling off this union thing. But again, I'm very much on your side of like, why can't we leave if we want to?
If I have to err, all right, I'm Team Bundy. Okay, everybody go to a wildlife refuge, bring your guns, and establish your own sovereign cattle grazing land. Okay, I don't care. I've had enough of federal overreach bullshit.
With freedom of association.
Yeah, all right. If I have to go full sovereign citizen,
management.
Whatever. Yeah. The thing is, like, all of our worst fears about the federal government have largely been realized. You know, they're unaccountable. They override the states. You can't escape them. If you do, they point guns at you. They have no respect for the constitutional rights that they're supposed to be restrained from touching through the Bill of Rights. Yeah, I mean, at some point,
yeah, this is one of the few places where Michael Malice is correct, where he said, anarchy is the status quo. Everything people say, oh, well, what their worst fears of what would happen if we lost the system we have now is what we are suffering now, which is might makes right. Sorry.
Well, and
whoever has the more guns gets to say what happened.
And that is.
And then they write the history books, and then they justify you making you their bitch.
That is the basis on which the federal government exists now. It's not the basis on which it was founded, but it is the basis that emerged over time. You can't leave because we point guns at you.
Exactly.
That is the counter to the Declaration of Independence that emerged about 100 years later. Yeah. Anyway, very thought-provoking question, Mr. Fed. Appreciate that. If you would like to send a thought or a question for consideration on the show, again, head on over to the contact page on my website. Look for the MC Live questions box. All right, we got to do some super chat. And to do super chat tonight, I thought I would get back into. I've done this a little bit on the stream before. I like when other streams play a little bit of background music, and I want to try it out. And I know people are going to make fun of me for that.
That's a big game, man.
But one reason I'm thinking about.
It sets the mood. I don't know. I kind of like it, man.
A little mood setting for Super Chat. Just some soft piano. I have a few choices. I'll mix it up. But I like to kind of close out the stream with the right feel. But also, Super Chat's very difficult to read sometimes. That's not the fault of the chatters. It's because my brain is dead at the end of the show, and I'm trying to read through your text, and I can't do it. And so there's a lot of gaps and confusion. I figure the smooth piano might guide me through that a little more easily. Give it a try.
Just relax. Do some breathing techniques. And we'll get through this smoothly. It's 11 o'clock here, so you can't come.
If you gotta go, just say the word. By the way,
7. No, this is great.
Long Don John. If you thought black fatigue was bad now, wait until Trump pardons Derek Chauvin. I've heard talk of this. Is it actually going to happen?
Only talk, but I've heard talk actually in Minnesota of it happening. And
there's no way it's going to happen in Minnesota.
That's what I heard.
The state charges? You think Tim Walz, I'm friends with school shooters, man.
That's what I heard.
No.
Yeah.
That's
on Twitter. I heard it on the Twitter.
You have insane Canadian sources if you think Tim Walz is going to pardon who's saying that?
I don't know.
Donald Trump might.
I swear to ask Rock.
On the federal charges, no. There's no way.
You are fake news. Very fake news.
All right, you can come back here and glow.
I could be fake news.
That Tim Walz pardons Derek Chauvin. I believe Trump might do it at the federal level. It would be largely symbolic, kind of politically risky in that he doesn't gain that much, but I would like it as just a ball swinging move. Like, don't care. Ha ha.
I think they're so demoralized right now. Just do everything.
Yeah. But it does actually matter.
Just Shiloh, all of it. Yeah. What are you going to do?
In honor of Shiloh Hendricks, I am pardoning
Derek Chauvin.
Shiloh was very brave. Right.
Yeah. Mike Walsh cried like a dog.
If he was pardoned federally, my understanding is it has some implications on how his sentence would play out in Minnesota. And he'd probably have to, he's in prison in like Arizona or somewhere, so I think he'd have to move to Minnesota for imprisonment at that point. It would change how he's handled.
What are his charges? Like, are they
the federal level?
Federally,
it's a violation
and state charges.
Yes, so he's convicted of murder, felony murder in Minnesota, and federally, he was convicted by Merrick Garland's DOJ of violating George Floyd's constitutional rights. Yeah.
By murdering him.
No, it wasn't a murder charge. It was a violation of his 14th Amendment right not to have his neck kneeled on.
Oh, okay.
Something like that.
14th, isn't that search and seizure? The
14th is the magical one. You got abortion in there. You've got gay sex in there. I don't know. The one thing if you look deeply enough in the penumbras, you can't find the right to secede. It's not in there. That's the one thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
Joshy
under
boy.
Abortion.
Well, it did cover abortion until the Supreme Court set that straight a few years ago. Joshy boy, I'd rather have a tamed boar come to my country than a wild primate. Okay.
Jeez.
Joshy boy can say that.
That took me a second.
Joshy boy, are you familiar with my favorite football player, Noah Kaniga? No, you don't know him? He's a linebacker for the.
That's a real name.
Yeah, he's a linebacker for the Eastern Michigan Hawks, I think is their name, and he lit the internet on fire over the last year because his name is Noah, Knigga, Noah Kaniga.
Yeah, it's sus.
And and he's white. Yeah, Noah Kaniga. Now that he's
South African white.
I don't know what he is. Now that he's at Eastern Michigan University, he's offering. The school or someone is offering jerseys for sale, signed Kaniga jerseys, and I got Joshy boy a signed Kaniga jersey, which I can proudly reveal he will display on the stream on Sunday. We will see an authentic, certified. I'll have to ask Joshy.
You have to do Matt Christiansen branded show brand Kaniga jerseys.
Yeah, listen, we need some creative merchandising around here, Noah. So can we do some kind of collab, and we'll figure it out. If Noah wants to come on the show, it's open. But yes, Joshy boy has a signed Noah Kaniga jersey. Very rare.
Amazing.
Stooge McDuck. Thank you, Joshy. I love that Hogg is getting yeeted. So do the DNC have to do it in the gayest way possible? Yeah, I don't know. What is I assume they just kick him to the
anything
curb.
involving David Hogg is the gayest way possible.
Yeah, I guess by definition. But do they have like a formal way they relieve him? I don't know.
I was back.
Daniel Jagger. I always get that wrong. Thank you, Stooge. Did I call him Scrooge? It's Stooge McDuck. Daniel Jagger. Over under on whether Shark Tank guy Kevin O'Leary runs for prime minister. Been doing a lot of media hits lately. He's Canadian? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You think
there's a lot of sneaky Canadians in the U.S.
Very
no.
subversive.
He just likes being on television. It's his whole. He's a wannabe Trump. I mean, he is our Trump. Like it's his whole thing is get on TV, play a business guy, kind of be a business guy in real life, but just get on TV. No, he'll never run.
Well, I'll have to take your word for it. I didn't even know he was Canadian until 5 seconds ago.
Yeah, he's from Montreal.
Yeah. Thank you, Daniel. Over on Odyssey Blankets, Matt, how much worse does Ben & Jerry's look after what they did to RFK? I didn't know what you were talking about, but I happened to see your chat before the show, so I Googled it. Did you see this?
What did they do?
The Ben & Jerry's guy, the co-founder, like heckled or protested RFK, saying RFK kills people at RFK's...
The guy who sells ice cream is accusing RFK of killing people.
Yes. He's very mad that he can't use whatever dyes or I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, I think so.
Although I think they sold the company, whoever this is. Ben Cohen, one of the co-founders of the company. I think they have since sold the company or they don't run it anymore. But yeah, there he is getting reconnection successful. All right.
Okay. Do you have to do anything with that or does it?
No, I don't know. My connection just dropped a couple times for some reason, but now it's back. Okay. Anyway, Ben & Jerry's guy lecturing.
There's just the layers of irony. Or it's like a cake. It's like an ironic cake.
Very good dessert.
An ice cream cake of irony.
Well done. All right. Let me hop over to Rumble. GR says, hey, Majagas. The story about the Spokane man says he had sex without consent, and then it later uses the word girl in the article. Good eye. I did notice that. Does that mean it was a minor? They usually say man or woman for 18-year-old. My understanding is I think he was 18 at the time, and the victim may have been 16, something like that. So it was a non-consensual sex situation. It wasn't... Oh, there goes my connection again. What the hell? Sorry, I guess they're trying to force me off the internet tonight. We'll see if this hangs on, but it's really having some problems right now. Anyway, I believe he was a very young adult and she was potentially a minor is what the situation was. All right, my connection is going crazy here, so I'm just going to close these out. Dangerous Spaces, I hate the media are still lying while pretending they are now telling the truth about Biden's cognitive decline. They're all saying he started declining in 2023. But pre-2020 election, The Atlantic wrote an article begging Biden to stay alive. He campaigned out of his basement. They stopped working at 9 a.m. Therefore, he was even president, or way before he was even president. Plus, they tried to actively debunk all that and more. Yeah, there's been a big shocking revelations that Biden, was totally incapacitated. They were planning on him using a wheelchair in his second term, all that kind of stuff.
So it wasn't a stutter. Is that? I hear Jake Tapper is very upset that they made him lie about it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. He's got a very
telling all now
revealing book. Yeah. God. Yeah. Okay. This is just going crazy. So I got Christmas.
At least it's coming out when it matters. Yeah. I don't know what's going on.
Fiery Waco. Best thing about Rumble, dollar rants. That's true. You can't do that on YouTube. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know what their minimum is. Dangerous Spaces. Hey, Mr. Stengel, white people were in charge when apartheid was being enacted. Guess who also ended apartheid? White people. How do you know their family weren't the ones who ended apartheid, moron? That's true. He doesn't know that, but some might question his motivations. Ninja Kitty Bonks. The kitty decrees that Matt's legion of duct tape deplorables are hereby barred from any association of molasses-covered cats and backyard barbecue parties. I'm sorry to hear it. But thank you. Appreciate it. Dangerous Spaces. It's like how Australians convince themselves they can speak English. Hey, I mean 100% accurate, but still cheap shot. Yeah. Surely Mark has to agree we speak English better than Biden or Sharpton. That's true.
That's true.
Yeah. From the South African talk from their South African talk to their sex without consent spin you covered in your video. The press very often talks some bullshit, don't they? Oh, excuse me. They express verbiage of bovine waste. Well, that's phrasing they would probably use. Laughing Boy. I have the right to become a sovereign citizen. A state has the right to leave a country. The trick is I can cause them enough pain and suffering to convince them to leave me alone. That's why 2A. Yeah, you might be onto the philosophical basis there.
I mean, again, idealistically, but I think it was tried and it didn't work out so well.
Well,
the whole leaving.
Seems like many are intent on another attempt. So,
fuck it.
Yeah. Anyway, hey, where'd my music go? Oh, wait, there we go. I was like, did I forget to loop this? All right. Anyway, it's a total duct tape production right now, regardless.
I'm loving the music, by the way, Matt.
Oh, it works for you. Cool.
Very, yeah.
I can't wait till everybody tells me they hate it and they tell me I suck.
Oh, you're going to get shit for sure. That's why I love it. Yeah, it's great.
All right. Well, anything else you want to say before we're out of here? Thanks to all our super chatters, by the way. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, no, awesome. Nothing more. I think I got it all.
All right. Well,
except if anybody wants to laugh, just to harp on the Australians, go on Twitter X or search "teaching Australian women how to say no" video.
Okay,
you will laugh.
I'll have to.
You have to see it.
Wait, I'll have to check it out. I guess I don't
because they can't say no.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks for tuning in tonight. Thanks to the live chatters and super chatters for making the live show a success until like the last 10 minutes here. Sorry about the connection. If you're listening on demand later, thank you kindly as well for supporting the show. Big thanks to Mark Aaron for sitting in tonight. His X account at LibertyMAaron, linked atop of the description. Thanks to our callers, emailers. Thanks to producer Tim for his continued assistance. Anything show related, MattChristiansenMedia.com. I'll be back on Sunday if the internet allows it. Have a great night.
Thank you, Matt.